Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the brand new SPL Waiting Room. It's kind of like our new look Esports Weekly. I'm Ryan Agro-Bailey, and I'll be your host. So we weren't sure going in, but it does turn out the global pandemics kind of mess up plans. We had a lot of big plans for Esports Weekly this year, but unfortunately, we are no longer in studio, and so we had to make some changes. But I think that you guys are going to like SPL Waiting Room quite a bit. It's still going to have all the things that you loved about Esports Weekly. It's going to have our recap from last week once we get into the SPL Phase 2. We're going to be looking at meta predictions, talking about teams that are doing well, roster changes. We've got one to go over today, just in case you didn't know. And, of course, give you our weekly predictions. And this time, we're keeping everybody accountable. We're keeping percentages for all of our casters and you guys, the community, at home, which is a big point of this SPL Waiting Room. We want to get you, the viewers, a little bit more involved than we were able to in the past. So I think that you guys are going to like the SPL Waiting Room for that alone. But we have to kind of get into it this week, right? I mean, there was so much that changed since the last time we saw this SPL. Sure, Ghost is the reigning champion as of right now, but how does the midseason change that? Are Hunters good with these new changes? Now they don't buy Executioner every game. What does that mean for them? All these new item changes. We're going to be talking a lot about magical ADCs, I'm sure, but things like the Sledge, how do they impact the meta? And we've got one and kind of a half new gods to go over that can be played in competitive. Cthulhu is going to get our first chance to see him. How good is he really? And of course, new Ratatosker. Which Acorn do we think will be picked, if he's picked at all? We're going to have our analysts come in and talk about that in just a little bit. So thanks for tuning into the SPL Waiting Room. Hopefully you like it, and stay tuned. Joining me on the first edition of the SPL Waiting Room will be the incomparable John Finch and Caleb Mifflin-Sullivan. Guys, thanks for hopping in here to the Waiting Room. It's about time, man. There have been so many changes to SMITE since the last time we saw competitive. I can't wait to start talking about it because the meta is going to be completely different than what we saw in the past. And I want to start with the biggest boy in the room. It's Cthulhu. I know chat is probably saying right now, oh, Cthulhu OP. Of course he's going to be top pick, top ban. Do you guys feel the same way? Finch, how about you?
You know, if I'm being honest, and it's not always the best idea to agree with chat, they can get a little bit out of pocket, but I think they might be right on this, and I really do think that Cthulhu is going to be strong, and I want to focus for my time on Cthulhu solo, because I think that's where he has a lot of potential. I've already talked to some pro solo laners who are excited to play him there, but it's impossible to box this man. I mean, he lowers your attack speed, he's stacking up mitigations on you, good luck trying to stop him from clearing. I say if you see him in solo, try and maybe get a solo laner that can clear and leave, or something like that. Go proxy, good luck trying to box this guy right now, because he's just so strong in that solo lane, or in support either. He's got options.
Yeah, he seems like he can do a lot of different things, but Miff, do you think that we'll see him early in the draft, or are there picks that you think that teams need to be worried about and don't necessarily want to open themselves up to?
If it weren't for recent meta changes, I think Cthulhu would be possibly the most contested pick within the SPL right now. But considering what we're seeing with item shifts like Ring of Hecate, magical ADCs, this new meta jungler, Ratatasker come into the fray, I think we might see him come in maybe second or third pick. And I'm going to agree with Finch. I think Soul Lane might be where Cthulhu finds his home. The pressure he brings, the survivability, he's got it all. CC immunity, the ultimate, everything you need. But I do want to emphasize that his support is also incredibly potent. He's going to be able to control the pace of the lane incredibly well. If Cthulhu doesn't want you touching your hunter, he's going to stop you from doing it.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to get past a man that, as Isaiah put it in the chat, thick on the battleground. It's difficult to get past for sure. And Miff, you mentioned Ratatasker right there. I'm not so sure that Rat is going to be top pick, top ban. I think he's good, but I don't think he's necessarily that good. Do you agree with that?
I think that Rat is one of the few gods, one of, if not the only god in the game that has the potential to win a match based off of RNG on his first item. If we see Ratatasker in the jungle go towards Bristlebrush Acorn, he can get that 20% crit, 40% additional damage on the dash. You're going to be swinging on just about anyone you hit with your first ability for about 400 damage, 350 damage. You can likely finish that Acorn at level 4. That's crippling. If you hit anyone at level 4 at that point, that's 50% of their health bar at least. You might just win a match off of that.
Finch, do you think the crit Acorn is going to be the most popular, though? Because I've kind of got a feeling that the consistency that the multi-stun Acorn brings might be the Acorn of choice for junglers.
Yeah, I really am scared to disagree with the man who got a rat skin himself, but I do think that Thistlethorn has some potential, right? It makes the stun so consistent for Ratatasker when he's rocking those 5 Acorns. I don't think the Acorn itself obviously doesn't give quite the same stat as some of those other ones, but I think it's got some potential. But I certainly do agree with Mifflin in this regard. I think we're going to see plenty of Ratatasker. Early pressure still very strong, and Rat was pretty good at it before. He's even better at it now.
And I think that's going to be a key point, especially with how these jungle camps have changed. And I think we'll touch on that in just a little bit. But I got to talk about the item that, frankly, everybody is talking about. Ring of Hecate is kind of dominating the battleground right now, gentlemen. How busted is this item really? I've heard some people say that it's one of the 5 best items ever released in SMITE. I find myself saying they're probably right more than they're wrong. I think it's that good, and I think magical ADCs are going to be a huge point here in this weekend. Do you find yourself agreeing?
Yeah,
I
I would say that I do aggro. I mean, if I'm in a ranked game right now and my top pick isn't banning Freya or picking it when it's open, you might as well close the window at that point, right? Something like those magical ADCs need to be picked up for your squad. It is Hecate, I think, that really enables them. It's good enough that you can pick that item up right away. It gives you everything that you could need, the lifesteal, the attack speed, obviously, the 15% increase to all of your healing overall. I think that if you're a magical ADC with this item like Freya or Kronos or Ola Run and you get your ultimate online and you have Hecate, good luck trying to kill them if they're over there in the long lane, because they've made it to the point where they can box just about any other hunter.
I think that it also has some pretty big implications for your role, Mifflin, in the jungle. Ao Kwong is starting to see some play in ranked at the very least. Hecate helps him. Finch mentioned a couple. Do you think Ao Kwong actually gets a viability increase? And who are some of the gods that you think use this item the best?
If you are magical and auto-attack based and you don't have Ring of Hecate, you're throwing the game. You're inting, you're not trying to win, and I think that's as far as it goes. Ao Kwong in the jungle, Ring of Hecate, you're definitely going to get value out of it, but you're not going to go the exact same build that all these other magical hunters are going. You're going to still look for that burst potential. Ob Shard, Sphere of Desolation, maybe a Polynomicon. But what the strength of Ring of Hecate is that it is so powerful in that second slotted item. Right after you finish boots, pick up that ring. All these gods you're normally picking up on, Freya, Olorun, Kronos, they're these late game hyper carries who are going to decimate once they're at 6 items. Now their power spike is moved to the 10, 12 minute mark when you finish that ring. You're already swinging with the best of them. You're fighting just about anyone that comes towards you. Your lifesteal potential is incredibly high. I mean, it's got 30% attack speed on it. 30% attack speed on a singular item. When we haven't even touched on the passive, Ring of Hecate, I wouldn't even say it's top 5 best items. I might agree with chat wholeheartedly and say that it's the best item Smite has ever seen.
It's very, very good. Real quick, guys, before we move on, who is the best Ring of Hecate abuser? Which character do you think benefits the most? I think Olorun that we'll see the most of necessarily, but Finch, what do you think?
I do think that Olorun's the one we're going to see the most of, but that's only because I think people are going to be banning Freya, man. I'm sorry, but she can go up to the sky. With Magus online, the ult will kill you. Just the ultimate. It's too much. You got to get rid of her.
Mifflin?
Olorun, probably going to be what we see the most, and I have to just reiterate what Finch said. I don't think Freya's getting through today. I really don't. This god dominates lane. She rotates out. Whoop, okay, well, that's the best ranged engage you need. And then, okay, well, maybe they dive on me. I have beads, I have Aegis, and failing all that, I've got Valkyrie's Discretion, which is beads and Aegis at the exact same time.
Yeah, it seems pretty good. I don't know, taking yourself out of combat and doing like 1,000 damage. Not bad. In an AoE, by the way. No problem at all for Freya. But maybe some warriors could give her some trouble with their new item that everyone's talking about, the sledge. Fellas, this item not nearly as dominant as Hecate, though that's pretty high bar to try and match. Do you think that the sledge is as good as advertised? Do you think that we're going to be seeing 2 or 3 sledges on each team this weekend? Finch, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think so, Aggro. I really do think Sledge is just that strong. And an interesting thing that I'm thinking about is the disparity between a warrior support and a guardian support, because obviously your guardian can't build this item. As good as Thebes is, it does feel like maybe just a slot. They can't quite match one of them in. So I think like gods like Horus or warrior supports like Hercules can make use of it is pretty scary. But also just in the solo lane too. Remember that in a lot of cases, some of their itemization has changed with Glad Shield not being as strong. I think Sledge is something we're going to be seeing a lot more of to make these warriors viable. Certainly a strong item, though, of course, not in the same stratosphere as Hecate.
Yeah, Mifflin, I think that Finch mentioned it right there. Warriors in support now because Sledge is such a key bridge item for them. Do you think, we've seen a ton of Hercules, I anticipate we'll continue with that, but the other warriors, do you think that we'll still be seeing them, Wukongs, Guan Yus, things like that? Do you think they'll have a resurgence in support because of the Sledge?
I think that we might not see those two in particular in support, only because I think that we might see Wukong or gods like him in the Soul Lane with Soul Leader changes. But as far as Sledge goes, I've been a fan of this item since before it was the Sledge. I liked Masamune, which gave you additional movement speed. Now, it's giving you 20% CCR, it's giving you a ton of health, the passive got a little bit better, and you're still getting 40 power off of it as well. That's just a fantastic bridge pick item. If you're playing a jungler like Robin or something along those lines, even Thor, you can leverage that incredibly easily and have that additional degree of survivability without sacrificing too much on the damage front.
I think that these hunters as well, dealing with the Sledge, might have some troubles, or maybe they won't, because the hunter's got some pretty significant changes as well, kind of mirroring what mages went through at the very beginning of the season, losing Obsidian Shard, and the hunters losing Executioner and Titan's Bane as these instant giant power spikes that really shred through defense. Now it's a little bit more spread out. I know we've talked magical hunters a lot. Let's try and stick to the physical ones here. Mifflin, how do you think these changes affect the hunter role, and how do you think that'll impact them this weekend?
I think it brings a lot of diversity, but with the item changes and the pen changes coming to the majority of the Hunter build, now you can go for this crit build with Fail Not or something along those lines, and you're not going to have to sacrifice out on pen. You can get at least 50% crit and still maintain that 40% penetration rate, and I would say that Hunters get their power spike a little bit earlier on. Executioner being overall weaker means that we've seen them shift their focus towards Atalanta's bow, and Hunters with haste, even if it is a partial haste, the Atalanta's haste, is going to be incredibly strong. If at any point a Hunter is in a team fight, catches that assist, gets a straight kill, something along those lines, that's gas pedal time. If the Hunter gets that haste passive rolling out, pop Heavenly, start running at the enemies, get that lead again, and then immediately move into crit. I'm thinking we're going to see Ninja Tabi, Atalanta's bow, and then immediately into a crit item of their choice, likely Fail Not.
Yeah, Finch, do you think that the Hunters are strong enough to still be able to compete with Hecate abusers on the other side?
I don't know about that. That's pretty tough to try and box 1v1 up against these Hecate users. But I think in team fights, they can still match that output. Mifflin's right with this Atalanta's Bow Fail Not inspired crit build that's out there right now. It's plenty strong. But Hunters have a lot of options. I've seen some of our SPL pros just kind of in their own games starting Berserker Shield as their first overall item. I think that is another thing that could potentially add some extra texture or layers to these Hunters builds. They're relatively open right now, a little bit more than we're used to seeing, because normally Hunters kind of always build the same 6 items and don't engage their brains much at all. Now I think you have to think a little bit more about what it is that you want to pick up. And again, I'm speaking as a Hunter main myself.
Of course, naturally. Listen, man, no one's competing on who has the lowest brain power among the roles. It's Hunters, and we've been knowing that.
We know
one.
it.
Guys, before we go, really quick, in 2 to 3 words or less, give me the meta predictions this week. What's going to stand out for you guys this weekend?
For me, I'd say it's got to be
Hunter duo.
Magic ADCs. Yep.
Okay, magical ADCs. I've got Golden Blade. We're going to be seeing a lot of that in the jungle for sure.
That's true.
Thanks so much for all your input, fellas. We're looking forward to seeing you guys on the cast a little bit later. Now, a little bit earlier, I got a chance to sit down. We've got a new series coming out called Grand Masterclass, where you can try and take some knowledge from the best of the best on specific gods that you can try and apply to your own ranked games so you can climb up to those Grand Master ranks, where our first episode is going to be on Baba Yaga. Take a look. What's up, SMITE fans? Welcome in. Thanks for joining us for our new series where we're going to be going over some of the newer gods released in SMITE, and we'll eventually get to some of the older ones, I guess, and talk about what they do with the best players that play them. And we've got 3 of the best Baba Yaga players in the world joining us here today. Herowind, Wolfie, and Big Man Tings. Guys, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to talk some Baba. Let's start at about why you would lock in Baba in any given game. What when you think of playing Baba Yaga, what are the things that you're picking her for to do in your game?
I think like the way I would think about it is maybe like people might laugh, but like she's kind of like a Merlin in my opinion. And it's like if you like her and if you think she's a strong character right now, you kind of just pick her. She also just has a lot of survivability. I think like her 3 has 30% mitigation or something like that max rank, and her ult makes you pretty hard to kill, especially with the recent buffs. So.
All right, sounds good. Wolfie, what about for you?
I think it's mainly her safetyness and the amount of damage that you have in her kit, right? And it also brings a random factor to the table where you don't know if she will be canceling your abilities or not. For example, if you were to play against the Raging, most of the time when you're going to be walking up to the first wave, you don't know if Baba Yaga is going to be canceling your one or not, so you can get an advantage from the get-go. And in team fights, that can be crucial as well if you're getting the silence at the right time.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that one randomness in a little bit, because I think that's a really interesting part of the kit. But Big Man, what makes you look at a team composition and say, Baba looks like a good pick here?
If you want to round it off, I think late game and mid game with like really strong teamfight mage, I'd say, with deals the high damage and is really safe, like Harry touched on earlier. You can pick that 4th, 5th pick and just get that big high damage mage and just round off your comp with her, which is a reason why she's so strong.
Yeah, she seems like one of those gods that brings a lot of late game damage, but maybe not. She doesn't like require as much setup as some of the other late game mages, like Scylla or something like that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what Wolfie was just saying with the randomness
of her one. How much do you guys actually think about that? What effect your one is going to provide in the middle of a team fight? Big man, we can start with you.
I would say low-key, it's kind of important. I mean, I personally cycle through my 1 and my 2. We can touch on the 2 later, but I cycle through my 1 a lot late game and try and go for the Y silence a lot of the time, or the oval silence, as they seem for me like the best ones in a team fight, where you can interrupt an ability which is like a longer cast time, or you can just like sit in it like an oval and you can just like use it as pill almost. So I'd say low-key it's kind of important, the silence one being the most important, but some of the others like the slow is also pretty good as well.
Wolfie, do you find yourself doing the same?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. The Y and the oval are definitely the most important because you can cut corners very easily with them. Peel mainly as well. The prots could be coming into play, especially for like peeling at times. Most of the time, you're going to be using the ability for damage and canceling abilities.
Sure. And Hurry, do you find the same?
Yeah, late game I think is when it's most important. I agree with Big Man there. I agree. If you had to pick any shape, like any shape combo with like an effect, it would be Silence Y. I think Y is the most effective. So late game, I think the most important thing that you do is you get a Y, just because it goes the farthest, and it's gonna hit the most people most of the time, at least in my experience, and it seems like Big Man's as well. And then early game, I try to get a Y as well. Like as soon as I load into the game, I try to get a Y because I can tag the speed from farthest away. For the first wave.
As you saw right there, you can check out more of that Grand Masterclass episode on the SMITE Pro YouTube. Check it out. It was a lot of fun. I learned some things about Baba. It has not helped me win, but that is my fault, not the pro's fault, or Baba's fault, for that matter. Moving on, we saw a little bit there from Herwind on E United. He's still there, Finch and Miff, but we had some changes. Genetics out, Snoopy from ADC to support, and now Guy J in as their ADC, as the full-time player there for E United. What was your first reaction when you heard this change, and how do you think it's going to work out for them, Mifflin?
I'm concerned. First off, it tells me that it seems like the SPL thinks there's not a lot of support talent out there, or at least not a lot of support talent that's willing to make the move for the SPL. But putting Snoopy, who I would say is one of E United's star players, a pillar of their success, into a role like support can go one of two ways. Either he's going to flounder around for a little bit as he tries to readjust to that role, or he's going to be able to make a bigger impact as support is able to rotate throughout the map and make their mark known just about everywhere, almost as like a pseudo secondary jungler. I'm really excited to see what type of support Snoopy decides to play. He can go along the Ionic lines, one of the true last actual supports of the game, who plays things like Kepri, Geb, Athena, or he can go along the PBM, the Aurora, play things like Hercules, Yamoja, early pressure, and try and find that success within the lane itself. I don't have enough data to back up any opinions I have on Snoopy right now in Season 7.
Yeah, fair enough. He's dipping his toe in for the first time in competitive support here today. Finch, let's talk about the new addition, though, to this E United roster, Guy J. Do you think he's ready for the SPL?
He has been. I've heard a lot of talk about Guy J and his potential, and it seems to me like a lot of the other pros have been watching this guy too, not to make some kind of pun about his name, but that they have had expectations for him being a strong player in the SPL. And I do think that the Hunter role is one of the easier ones to jump into if you have to when you're making that leap. I mean, let's be honest, with the way the meta is right now, your Hunter is not the one, in most cases, determining who wins and loses the game. A lot is determined by the jungler and that mid 3v3. So if Guy J can kind of hold his own up against some admittedly very strong Hunters in the SPL, that's always been really one of our stronger pools, then in the late game, in those team fights, and they just need him to watch his positioning and make sure that he's doing those types of things correctly, his relic usage, I'm not worried about Guy J.
I think it's going to be fun to watch, man. I can't wait to see what this duo lane does, because Snoopy's been streaming a lot of support. I've been watching a lot of that. We'll see if those mechs carry over. I mean, ADC to support, you think of the most mechanically demanding position versus usually the least. Maybe Snoopy can make a difference there for United as they try and turn it around here in Phase 2 after a pretty disappointing Phase 1 for that squad. And that brings us to our first week of the SPL, where we should have a lot of really fun matchups to look at. I want to take a look at the schedule first and foremost. Of course, if you guys haven't gotten your votes in on the Esports and Live Streams tab, you're probably messing up. Though, maybe not based on what Chad has been saying. I've got some interesting looks at their predictions a little bit later. But we get to see that duo lane, the new look duo lane for E United early. We see them later on today up against Radiant starting around 5 o'clock, depending on how long this Ghost versus Obey set takes out here at the outset. What matchup stands out for you guys, though, that you're most looking forward to, Finch, this weekend?
If I had to pick a match, it's the Renegades versus Obey set at the end of the week. I think that is the one that Obey kind of has the best chance of finding a win. They've got a tough doubleheader with to start off the phase, and I think that they could potentially upset Renegades, though. We're talking to some of those guys on Renegades. They feel pretty prepped, too, so I expect that one to be a little closer maybe than chat might expect.
Big notes here for our first set of the day, Ghost versus Obey. Of course, Wowie serving that suspension that he was handed at the end of Phase 1. And that means Stewart is actually going to step in for them. Not the inbound into ADC, Kassir support nonsense. We don't have to worry about that. Stewart in his ADC, inbound staying as support. Mifflin, how do you think that affects their chances up against Ghost?
Look, if we saw inbound go towards ADC again, this is a stance that I've held to the entirety of the time. If he's switching roles off of support into Hunter, that's throwing the game. If it were up to me, I would have been yelling at him. I would have been throwing a fit on Twitter. I don't like it when any of these main role players are switching off, especially considering that inbound isn't the most mechanically talented player on that roster. What he does bring is what he needs to bring in support. He's a good communication center. He has the eye of the initiator. He knows when he goes in. So having him play support again is going to be an instantly way better look. As far as how well Stewart's going to be able to replace Wowie, I think these two players have very similar play styles. When I think of Stewart, a little bit safer, but even then, once Stewart gets a lead, I think he feels a lot more comfortable playing aggressive, trying to make these game-changing plays than I see from Wowie. When I watch Wowie, it's almost as if I'm seeing someone who's kind of just trying to hold his own in his lane, make sure that he's not the reason the team loses, and just create space for Sino to play. I think Stewart might be trying to get a little bit more involved, a little bit more proactive.
Well, Stewart, of course, teammates with Sino on that locked and goated squad, and certainly has some synergy there. I think Stewart is well deserving of this shot at the SPL, even if only for one match. Unfortunately for him, it's up against the reigning champs right now, which is Ghost. So certainly a tough draw for him, but I'm excited to see his debut at that level. Let's take a look at our predictions for all the casters and the community coming in to this weekend. Mifflin, I'm seeing an Obey symbol right there for you up against Ghost. You really think they might be able to pull that upset off? I'll ask for more details in a second, because I do have to point out that the community loving E-United right now. They've got E-United up against Radiance and Ghost later on this weekend, so they're really hoping that Guy J Snoopy lane really plays out. Mifflin, really quickly, why do you think Obey can win up against Ghost today?
Well, first off, I want to preface this by saying that I didn't know that we were going to be held accountable for these, but I think that Obey has an absolute shot, because I was speaking with Inbound. I was speaking with Sino behind the scenes during this little SPL break, and they told me that they're aiming for top 4 to top 3, and they don't. I'm imagining they're not lying to me. Why would they do that? So they have to have something that they know is going to work out for them. And we saw just these flashes of brilliance in Phase 1 throughout the entirety, where they were looking like a very highly contentious team. If they were able to hone in on that over this long break, grind it out with scrims, they might be able to run in it. I really think they can.
We'll have to wait and see. Of course you're going to be held accountable, Mifflin. We're going to have percentages for every caster and the community moving forward here in the SPL waiting rooms. Can't wait to see what your percentage is looking like after this weekend. And for all of us, thanks so much for watching the SPL waiting room. No more waiting around. It's time for the SPL.
This world is in trouble.
We can't let this happen. They need our help.
Well, it is finally Friday, SMITE fans, and that means SPL Phase 2, Season 7, Day 1, something like that, is kicking off. It is Dulcet and Goremizer for the first set of Phase number 2. Gore, and it's on the back end of maybe the closest phase of SPL we've ever had. Cannot wait to get this one started.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited. First off, having a regular schedule every week finally is going to help my life immensely. But also, just getting back into it, I mean, like you said, at the end of Phase 1, everything just felt so close-knit. I mean, even Obey, who, had a lot of rough losses at the very beginning of the phase, we're starting to take it to some of these top teams. Now that they're going to be able to kind of start off at that regular strength, I think it's going to make for a much more interesting Phase 2.
Now, here's your schedule for this week. Just briefly touched on it in the SPL waiting room, but we got Ghost, Obey starting off the week, Radiance, United to round out our day here today. As always, at home, if you guys are watching, make sure to tweet at us at SmitePro, hashtag SPL, and hey, you might see your tweet here on the broadcast. Gore, let's not waste any more time. Let's sink our teeth into this first matchup that we got in here, Day 1, Phase 2, Season 7. Talk about Ghost maybe with me a little bit first. They are the mid-season champions. They're the hot hand here in this league, and you got to assume their confidence is high going up against Obey, who's admittedly had a rough start to their Season 7.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about Ghost's start to Season 7 as well. While it wasn't, catastrophic and it wasn't, countless losses like Obey had, they definitely didn't start off Phase 1 on the right foot, and that was with some of the new changes coming through. Now, there's even more changes that are coming through since we're playing after mid-season, so there's a question of whether or not they're going to stumble at the beginning like they did in the beginning of Phase 1. But, I mean, honestly, you've got Panda Cat, you've got PBM, you've got FineOK, Sam, as well as Captain Twig. At least 3 of these guys, I can say, have very, just huge meta-changing brains when it comes down to it.
Right.
I think between PBM and FineOK, they are more than willing to shake things up just to see and try out some of these new things. And I think the way that things have shifted specifically, I mean, Sam was one of the carries in Phase 1. Now we've made some of the junglers a little bit stronger. Aggro mentioned Golden Blade. I'm thinking Serrated Edge. I'm curious to see what Sam can do today.
I absolutely agree. I'm so glad you bring that up because you'll see it a little bit later on this week, but I was able to sit down with some of the Obey guys, really talk to Sino as well about where he thinks this meta kind of stands. And jungle was what came to the forefront of that conversation. Even Wolfie in the mid lane kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, I guess it's the junglers who are going to be carrying a lot of these games. And I don't disagree. So I love that you bring up Sam and how pivotal he's going to be to this Ghost team. He helped carry games in Phase 1, but now maybe in a better position than ever to get this Ghost team off to a hot start. Now, their opponents in Obey, remember, they're going to have a different look at the long lane here today as Wowie still 1 game out from coming back post-suspension. So a tough start for Obey, Gore, going up against the mid-season champions in Ghost, but also not at full strength.
Yeah, that was actually something I had kind of forgot about. I feel so long ago that all those competitive rulings came out, but because a lot of these teams had their players sit out their 2 sets throughout, mid-season and things like that, now we're in this position where Wowie is the only one left who still has this 1-set suspension going into this. But they're grabbing Stuart, like you had mentioned, and it kind of feels net neutral overall. I mean, it's actually going to be interesting to see how it comes in today. Stuart has made some very interesting plays that we have seen throughout the league. Wowie, though, I mean, you have to talk about the fact that he's experienced with Obey, so you have that trust and that feeling that comes in there. That's probably going to be the biggest difference between them. They kind of memed him in the pre-show about how hunters aren't necessarily the ones carrying the games. It does kind of feel like the junglers, your supports, your mids, even your solo laners to an extent, that are going to make that bigger impact. But honestly, we're also coming into the Ring of Hecate world, where Typhon's Fang is going to make these guys unkillable. If you're playing, if you're Stuart here, you might be able to bring in a Kronos, an Olarun, a Soul, a Freya, somebody over to that duo lane, and just absolutely decimate. And if you can do something like that, that's not only a good stamp for you here in the Pro League, but it's a good way to get Obey started as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a jungle matchup here. Sanford Soccer against Sino. Cannot wait to get this one going, especially with a lot of the conversations we've had. The SPL waiting room guys talked about it a little bit in the new meta section of that show as well. But I like that you put a little focus on the mid lane here, and maybe specifically looking at Wolfie and really made a name for himself on the Raijin and the Merlin there in phase number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Spear of the Magus changes obviously may be impacting the middle lane a little bit there. What are expectations in your mind for Wolfie here today?
So this is a very interesting one because stat-wise, Wolfie was one of the most decorated for Obey through phase 1, but a lot of that really was the fact that he was there the whole time, right? Sino became quick to top first bloods on the team, highest kills, or at least competing for highest kills on the team, and he was there much less time than Wolfie. So I think Wolfie, we had kind of joked about it a few times during phase 1, how they mentioned they wanted to play through the mid lane. I think now's the chance to show that. If Sino and Wolfie work together, then this could be the Obey squad that we didn't know we could see coming into phase 2.
Well, the casters in the community outside of Mifflin, they have Ghost Gaming here in this one. Obey, certainly an uphill battle in their first game of phase number 2. Lots to talk about, Gore, I think, in picks and bans. A lot of what you've listed here is going to come to the forefront. Cthulhu now available. The mage ADCs ever so important. What do you think is going to be priority here? I mean, Persephone was highly banned out pretty consistently. Do you think Cthulhu belongs in that category? Where does your mind go?
So I'm actually surprised the first thing that we see, maybe less surprised because it is against Ghost Gaming, but the first thing that comes out is Hercules. It feels like right now Warriors, especially in the support role, but the Guardians as well, they just don't feel as good. You get kind of beat up. I mean, I'm a support main through and through. I don't like my early game anymore. I can't make the dumb mistakes I typically make in terms of gameplay. We're not going to see that here, but I think we're going to see the escalation of these magical ADCs specifically. You see Freya there. I wouldn't be surprised if Oleron, Chronos, someone joins them down there because I think the Ring of Hecate as well as the Typhon's Fang combo, it just can make you nigh unkillable at the beginning, and when you have that kind of combo going for you, it's just rough. The problem is if you're focused on them, it would let something maybe like that Cthulhu Ghost Bands away through, or you're looking at like Arachne right now, who all of a sudden, just because of Serrated Edge as well as this Golden Blade start, it is actually somewhat viable. Bakasura, Kali, your Dajis, Pele, even Ratatoskr with his new Acorns can be a huge jungle shakeup, and I'm interested to see now what they're going to pick up since there's so much available.
Yeah, a lot of meta questions answered early on here. Cthulhu taken away, Freya there as well, Persephone off the board. First overall pick, it's an Uller here for Obey. Obviously, maybe a little flexibility, could see some different looks at the long lane, but you don't seem too surprised there, Gore, by the Uller locked in.
So it did just throw me off until I remembered, oh, right, they have a substitute hunter coming in, right? You want this guy as comfortable as possible. Stuart, you do not want him to be on any shaky ground, and if he's going to play Uller, he's going to look good. We had talked about a couple of the items a little bit earlier, but the Atalanta's bow, Fail Not, if you want to go that route, you can also just focus much more on power. Uller's incredibly flexible, and there was a reason he was top pick at the end of last phase in terms of the way things were going, one of the top picked hunters. I think it's going to carry on true here. A lot of good CC and a lot of good damage for him. He just fits the mold of any team.
Well, Yamoja, Oleron, both locked in here for Ghost in a long lane that I'm scared of, Gore, in the current meta. You talk about Ring of Hecate coming into the pick and ban phase here. Freya found herself in the ban column, as we've mentioned, but Oleron absolutely one of the premier gods to take advantage of the reworked ring, I suppose, out of that category. You pair that with the Yamoja, maybe shore up some of that early game for Oleron, and Ghost Gaming have to be happy with their first two.
Yes, and I think this is actually going to be interesting because originally I was going to say Uller, we've been talking about mage ADCs. That does mean typically you'd want something more physical on your team to take up that place, and that's where, Medusa, sometimes your Neiths come in, like these ability-based hunters, but because they pick up that Aphrodite, it feels like Obey are still going pretty standard in terms of their composition. They grab that Nike that we saw Sino work so well with in Phase 1, and it feels like Obey are doing the more or less exact same thing they would have wanted to do at the end of Phase 1. They're playing the same game, and since Aphrodite's able to make it through, because there's so many other priority bans to be had here, that healing is going to be monstrous to deal with.
Looks like I might be standing corrected here. It looks like Ho Yi will be paired with the Emoja in the long lane for Ghost, and then Captain Twig out of the middle lane will be piloting that Oleron. I suppose you could plug and play either of those, so we'll have to wait and see in-game where Ghost Gaming elect to put those two hunters. It's a Fafnir Xing Qin band out for Ghost Gaming. High presence on the support for Obey, taking a lot of those top-tier gods off the table. But I think, as much as we've talked about Ghost and talked about what they've gotten so far through their first three and how they're very strong picks, I think Obey absolutely there as well. Comfort on Stewart, very important. But then an Aphrodite Nike, those two have been towards the top of the annoying tier list, and maybe that's a good thing as far as difficulty to play against.
So I'm actually a little curious about it because there's a lot of focus, like you said, Xing Qin, the Fafnir, the Terra. Cthulhu makes sense because solo lane is typically where he's going to go. But we saw Geb and Khepri, especially paired with an Aphrodite, being maybe one of the top supports, period, throughout Phase 1. And I kind of expected Obey to go that route. I mean, you get Aphrodite with Undying Love, all of a sudden, hey, cool, here's a second life for you to stay alive here. Then you get Khepri literally giving you a second life, and it could change the pace of things. But there you go, the Ymir, who I'm a huge fan of, and I actually love what they're doing here. Those wall placements, if you get them just right, not only do they feel good as a support to set it up that way, but for someone like Nemesis, no jump, Olarun, no leap, they're not going to be able to escape here. So Ghost, you're going to have to be cautious in the jungle.
Gore, I don't know what to make of it. Ghost Gaming's draft here. I mean, this is maybe our new reality given some of the item and god changes here going in to the mid-season. Hades and Nemesis to round out the draft for Ghost. Gore, are those a pair of gods that give you some good feeling about Ghosts 5?
If you had told me Nemesis and Hades were going to get picked up at all this weekend, I would have been maybe laughing at you. Just in terms of everybody that's available, they weren't necessarily high on my list of gods I expected to see. Agreed. But I'm excited to see them. I think Nemesis, especially against a Nike, an Aphrodite who's going to put some, protections on herself, Ymir who's going to be pretty tanky, she is going to help shred through those three gods pretty easily. So a lot of target-oriented calling for Ghost I expect to see. In Hades, and this one's coming out of left field. You just have to see it.
It is Phase 2, Week 1, Day 1, Obey versus Ghost, and it's Finch and Mifflin on the call.
Damn, is it good to be back, Dave. Let's hop into the SPL. Finch and Mifflin here as Obey and Ghost will be our very first match. And I think that we should start. We already knew the mains ADCs were going to happen. No big surprise there. Sustain's still really good. I really want to start here, Mifflin, with Sam for Soccer picking this Nemesis because there are so many junglers we thought would be strong. The basic attack assassins, the Bakas, the Kalis of the world. But I feel like Nemesis into Nike, into Ymir, that all feels pretty good to me. Do you like that pick here?
I like Nemesis into this exact draft, and I think when we talk about Nemesis openly outside of the SPO, I like to bring up the fact that she has no real way to engage herself. She's completely reliant on the rest of her team to find those opportunities to get in herself, but she's going to have that. Fine OK is going to be able to dive the backline incredibly well. That's a 2-second fear. 2 entire seconds that no one's going to be able to deal with Nemesis auto-attacking them. Captain Twig is going to be drawing a lot of the attention in all of these engagements because an Ola run that's allowed to free cast is an Ola run that is an absolute issue. So I think that Nemesis is definitely going to work into this draft, but it's going to be difficult. Inbound on this Ymir has a pretty decent matchup into Nem in the early game. You can freeze out, get rid of the shield instantly, but it's a double-edged sword. If Nem gets the first advanced strike onto inbound, there's no way this Ymir is going to be able to make a comeback. Sanctified Field almost makes it impossible for Ymir to operate. Panda Cat on this Hu Yi has a really good matchup himself. There's a lot that Obey is going to have to work through with the draft that they have. I think they're putting a lot of onus on this Aphrodite to make it through the late game.
It does seem like a lot of it is going to be relying on this Aphrodite to carry them late, and then a lot on Sino's shoulders, I'm thinking, to get them there with this Nike in the jungle. Sam already getting aggressive onto Wolfie. Brings him low, but not a lot of kill potential there. One thing I want to point out for us here, Myth, is look at this relic start here for Polar Bear Mike. He's gone with the Sunder, and I feel like with some of the changes to it, we've seen it picked up a lot in response to Nike, but I don't think it's just Nike. I think this could be strong against Amir, too. What do you think about this first relic?
I think it's the smartest pickup you want. For those who aren't initiated, the new Sundering Spear, yeah, it removes shields. That secondary health bar that Sino might be relying on, he could just not have it anymore. Sure, it's a skill shot, but putting it on the emoji means that a long-range stun sets you up, find that Sundering Spear afterward. You have to wait until Sino uses that ultimate, but it's going to be a huge determining factor. I'm not sure that we're going to see Sino even try and use it until he knows that PBM Sunder is down.
That's true. I mean, it does still get a lot of value just as damage if you're going for a much more damage-oriented Nike-type build. And a lot of the cases, you're not even that much reliant on the health shield because it does scale so much off your own health. Obviously still valuable, but I think in the jungle, the Sunder may be a little bit less of an issue, but you're certainly right there, Myth. It's a great pickup into Nike almost in every occasion. We should be able to see Polar Bear Mike get some good value out of it. Another place to take a look has got to be the solo lane. There were a lot of changes here with Gladiator Shield not being nearly as strong now, and what are Warriors going to do over there? It looks like the answer is, who needs them, right? Bring in Hades and Aphrodite, and I guess that's who's battling in solo lane now.
Yeah, just pick gods that have sustain in their kits. Right now, if you're looking at a warrior, the best sustain item in my mind likely gonna be that Soul Eater. Now that the passive works before you have it fully stacked, we've seen Sun Wukong get a little bit of a resurgence over there. But failing that, why not pick a god that has a heal on your 3? Both teams decided to do that. Aphrodite's got the birds, Hades has got Devour Souls. There's plenty of ways that they're going to be able to sit in this lane for a long time, but just off the builds right now, Final K is going to get slightly outscaled. It seems like Ducky's going to be moving into that Book of Thoth, which means that he can sit in the lane, farm up his stacks, play passively, and just continually get stronger.
No ultimate for Ducky. This should be first blood as the Pillar of Agony keeps him locked down. Fine OK finds her very first kill of Phase 2 SPL and puts Ghost on the board.
That's a rough one, man. You just get a little bit outscaled. You don't get the map pressure that you need. Ducky's stuck at level 4. That's a free gank. Final K likely didn't even really need help there from Sam for Soccer. And the silence to come through to make sure that the Kiss couldn't stun out the Nemesis was perfect. A well-executed gank, and it can continue to happen now. If Final K continues to run with this lead and Ducky going a no movement speed build this early on, means that Nemesis can walk on over and just continue slowing him out, get the follow-up from Final K. This Aphrodite might be struggling.
It could certainly become a problem there for Ducky. And remember, Ducky and Sino, I think, largely considered the pillars of this Obey roster. In my mind, a lot of sort of my expectations for them around Phase 2 was considering those two their star players. And if they already have the Sunder to deal with Sino, and now Ducky's falling behind early, that is a bit scary for Obey. But things are not out of reach just yet. Look at some of these new items that have come in for Ghost. We already see the Golden Blade there for Sam for Nemesis. No big surprise there. But Fine OK, which Doug pointed out for us, our excellent spectator, is working on a ring build. Do you think that's Hecate coming in for this Hades?
Man, I really hope not, because if Hades is picking up Ring of Hecate, that's indicative of just how strong that item is. Hades is not an auto-attacker. I don't think I've ever seen someone pick up a ring on Hades and thought to myself, oh, that was pretty smart, but now in Season 7, when you just have that phenomenal stat stick, it's going to work out really well, and it will allow him to save his abilities. Normally he's going to have to use his 3 for sustain, but no longer.
Inbound, trying to make his way in, but this is the exact part of the matchup he's going to struggle in. Pulled in by the Pillars of Agony. Polar Bear Mike drops down the River's Rebuke as well, but right into the backline goes Sino. He's got 4 members in front of him, but they just don't have the damage. Starting to finally push Ghost out, but the blue buff invade already successful. Fine OK narrowly avoids a little bit more trouble, still somehow clinging to life, but Wolfie rotating over the Chernobog, able to find the first kill, and they're not done yet. They want Mike, but good job using the Riptide to allow him to reposition.
Look, that fight 100% was going Ghost Gaming's way until Sino got the loop around and was able to lock down 4 members for about a solid 2 seconds. And he allowed Obey to rotate in, surround the entirety of the enemy team, and turn what was an already lost fight. They'd already lost it into a win for them. That's clean play. You can't rely on Sino to make 4-man pushes happen like that all the time. Bobby gets out alive with the help of Ducky. The ultimate comes through. That's clean from Obey, but still, all they did there was mitigate loss. They didn't pull back a huge win in their favor, and they were still looking at about a 1,500 gold deficit 5 minutes in.
Already, they've started to fall behind in a pretty significant way. You're absolutely right to point that out there, Mifflin. I do want to give Inbound a little bit of credit for using the wall to prevent him from being pulled further into the Pillars of Agony, perhaps that having some relevance there for them in the fight. I like where his head's at, but so far, I think we're already starting to see shades of what could define this match later on. Amir is a bit punishable by just about everything Ghost has drafted at this point.
Look, Finch, I don't want to raise the alarm bells just yet, but that is a Ring of Hecate on Fine OK.
Yes,
I mean, I don't know what he's going to do to use it. Like, he's got to be auto-attacking, right? That's how you're going to get the value out of it. But Hades has always had strong auto-attacks. If anyone is a fan of Divios, he's always said that Hades has the easiest auto-attacks to land in the game. Maybe he finds the value now.
He's gonna need it as Inbound puts a gank onto the solo side wall to cut off the escape. So Final K turns right back around. The kiss off the mark from Ducky, and that's essentially nixes any chances of a gank for the Order side team on the solo side. A little bit of rotation from Sam, but no duress there for Final K, so they ease up. Blue Buff Invade was there last time, but Sino defends it. So Obey can breathe a bit easier, but Final K going back in. The ultimate from Sam was there as well with the Divine Judgment, but good use of the Undying Love to get Ducky out of there. So now Wolfie's here as well, a full-on party in the solo lane.
It seems like the solo lane has had most of the focus from both teams here, and I just have to say, Ghost is benefiting from it greatly. Captain Twig's been allowed to free farm. Yeah, that's an Ola run. You don't want him getting to late game easily.
Yeah, they're going to fight 2 Ring of Hekates, I assume, because Captain Twig is certainly building one as well. And I do want to talk a little bit about how Hades does weave a lot of autos in with what he's doing. So, I mean, I think it makes some sense as Mike uses the River's Rebuke to lock in Inbound. Not a world where the Amir can make it out of that. Another easy kill for Ghost.
If Bobby finds himself in another sanctified field ever, his life is forfeit. He's got no way to escape it, except for maybe late game he could throw up a wall to just block out those autos. But as far as freezes go, or Glacial Strike, or anything he wants to do inside, it's easy to interrupt. Even if he finds Olaron on his own, it takes so long to channel the freeze on Ymir that Olaron can knock you up, slam you 6 times with auto attacks before you touch the ground again, and just, you lose your life. It's not going to work out at all, and that's why I was so surprised to see this Ymir taken so late in the draft. And failing that, even if Olaron's not looking at you, Ymir's going to have a very poor matchup, and a Nemesis. Having no mobility means that the slows that are generally weak CC for a jungler are going to be all that Nemesis needs.
Stewart is stuck inside the stuns. Beads have to be used to get away from Panda Cat. We haven't talked much yet about the sub who's stepping in for Obey in a spot where obviously Wowie unable to compete here for this first game. And we were saying how I think maybe there's a little bit less pressures on Hunters here now more than ever in this meta. I wasn't expecting it to be quite like this, where no one looks at them literally for 9 minutes, but still, it does seem that as long as he can get away from this pressure from Panda Cat, he should be able to make it to the mid to late game pretty easily.
And that might be it. You might have hit the nail on the head here. Maybe Obey's shifting their focus towards this short lane just so it draws Ghost's attention away from Long and they could fight around their core members. That's a pretty viable strategy. It's just so far it hasn't quite worked out. Ghost has just been slowly stripping away the map, stripping away buffs, playing around these fights slightly better, and the lead's growing.
Panda Cat in trouble now, though. Wolfie has used this ultimate well, cuts off Panda Cat with some help from Sino, and the mid lane are able to find another kill. We haven't talked about this much either, but essentially, I think you could say we basically have 2 Hunters in the middle lane here, right? Obviously the Chernobog, but the magical ADC from Captain Twig. Are you surprised we don't see the more traditional mage picked up here?
I am, especially considering how strong mages are right now. I would say that they're hitting their stride in Season 7. The Phase 2, mages are getting all that much more powerful. I mean, they've got so many more items allowing to them, and Ring of Hekate just comes to mind in general. Now that I know that Hades are going to pick them up, we might see Ring of Hekate on everyone. This item is so absolutely strong, so instead of electing to take someone that could utilize it, instead going for the Chernobog in mid, is going to allow him to rotate out very easily. He can escape the Sanctified field, he shouldn't have to worry about getting ganked, but as far as late game scaling goes, not too great.
Ducky missed the kiss again, so he might be in trouble. Same for Captain Twig. Even with the Sanctified field, they're able to take him down. Ducky does eventually fall to the dive between Final K and Sam, and Mike able to turn things around and get the kill onto the Amirs. That means across the map, it's 2 for 1 in favor of Ghost.
It is, but having Obey this grouped up on this side of the map means that Ghost have to stick around and be worried about the gold free. Panda Cat essentially TKO'd at this point. He has the healing available from Yamoja. If Obey want to, they can move towards gold and try and force a fight again with that numbers advantage. Instead, they're going to go back to farming. Keep an eye on the mid laners right now. 2-0 for Wolfie, but he's only got about a half level lead over an 0-1 Olaron because Captain Twig's been allowed to free farm the entire time.
It has made it much harder for any kind of substantial lead to be developed over this Olaron. And as good as Chernobog is, I just don't know once things like Demonic Grip and Magus are online for Captain Twig, if Wolfie can match it. I think the itemization for mage ADCs right now is just that much stronger. So this is potentially scary for Obey, but they have shown us that they came into this with a game plan. They have had solo side focus with multiple gank attempts over there. They recognized just now that they had a chance to catch Captain Twig out and find a kill there. This isn't the same Obey from Phase 1 who looked directionless. This Obey came in with a strat.
They did, but it's a double-edged sword again. With Bobby essentially never going back to duo lane and hovering on that solo side, it leaves options like this available to Ghost, where gold is just going to go to them for free. Sure, Obey might get Pyromancer in return, but that's not a good trade. It really isn't. Just at this point in the game, the mobility from Pyromancer is relatively valueless, so they're just getting less gold and XP from their objective, and Ghost Gaming get free reign of the duo side of the map.
This has been one of the failings of this strategy from Obey so far, is that it feels like the left side of the map has been left a bit open, and that might be where you want to spend the most attention. Cyno could be in trouble. The link is there from Ducky to give him this extra life. Jumps out of the Pillar of Agony coming from the Hades, but Sam still had the Divine Judgment. Fine OK cuts down inbound. I like the idea here, Cyno, but you're only buying yourself a little bit of time as Fine OK gets another kill onto Ducky. Cyno falls as well, and suddenly a 3-for-0 for Ghost.
I don't know if you saw Cyno's shield disappear, but it did instantly because PBM slammed him with the Sundering Spear. I mean, that survivability that you thought you had? No, you don't anymore. Good luck with that. Don't use it if PBM's in range. And Cyno loses out on his life, and immediately, once Cyno's out of the fight, being that main pillar of Obey's team fight, the rest of their team's going to fall as well.
Now the tier 2 tower in right is being pressured. That's earned by Fine OK and Sam's pressure they've had in solo all game long. That is the tier 2 tower down. Mike is low, but Stewart couldn't find the hail of arrows, leaps in and gets the auto even through the Riptide. But what about Twig? He's got Wolfie in trouble very late on the bees. Maybe they just came off cooldown, but either way, that is it for Wolfie. They cannot keep up the dive though onto inbound underneath the tier 1 tower, so it'll just be 1-for-1.
That right there is exactly what I'm talking about. When you think of Olorun, you think he's going to be this late-game hyper carry, but already he's got a Tier 1 ring and Ring of Hecate available to him. He's shredding anyone that stands in front of him. Wolfie took maybe 4-5 auto attacks there and immediately loses his life, and sitting inside Sanctified Field, Bobby was of no use. He couldn't do anything. It couldn't even block autos. He couldn't walk in the way because he was so slowed. That's going to be rough, and it's going to have to be something Obey addresses in the future. If Captain Twig's allowed to survive in these fights, if he's not the first target Obey's diving onto, I don't see how they win a team fight.
Well, Gore spent a lot of time talking about how good Typhon's Fang is right now, and I think Fine OK is happy to show him the evidence right away. That's what he backs up this Hecate with in his build. It does give you the percent penetration, obviously, but it's so big in terms of amplifying your lifesteal, with Hades already does so well. This build from Fine OK, even though it's relatively light on procs, he only really has the sovereignty, I think it still makes it pretty effectively tanky.
He is going to be incredibly hard to kill. The second he uses that ultimate, he's going to be healing for 60, maybe 70 per tick per person inside of it. He's also going to get the mitigations from channeling the Pillars of Agony. He's got Sovereignty online to help out his team if they want to group up on him. I mean, his damage output's phenomenal as well. Hades is looking like a very meta pick.
Yeah, Fine OK making it look good right now as Obey Alliance get a bit aggressive, looking for the red buff invade. Twig in trouble, but Fine OK shows up like a hero from the wings and locks down inbound. Not enough for the kill, but Captain Twig suddenly healthy, ready to rejoin the fight. And Ducky could be the one that ends up paying the price. Great ultimate from Polar Bear Mike to lock Ducky back in, and PBM will get the kill he earned. What about the tier 1 tower? Ghost had grouped underneath it 5 men strong, burned down the tower, and continue to move around the map, taking whatever they want from Obey's jungle.
And there's nothing Obey can do about it. Bobby at level 11, no second relic available to him, means that he, again, is just going to get absolutely decimated every single team fight. Ducky moves in and is able to save Bobby's life, but trades his own in exchange. That's pretty low value. This Aphrodite is sitting at 0-4. When you think of Afro, you're thinking of a generally pretty safe pick, but since he couldn't pick up the beads, he couldn't get the Aegis like you would normally see from Afro mid, instead he goes for Teleport and the Shell. He's more team fight oriented. He could rotate around the map a lot better, but with this deficit already 2 levels down, wherever he goes, he's not winning the engagement. This Afro is going to have a very hard time making his way to level 20.
And it's not a lot of anti-heal online that's been doing it. This Curse Donk just comes in from Mike, but they've been bodying this Afro for the most part without it. Cyno falls as well in the mid lane as Fine OK gets the better of him. He's done with solo lane. The tier 2 and tier 1 towers are down at this point, so he is just a roaming level 16 threat you have to deal with at all times. But Myth, talk to me about this Nemesis jungle build. It's the Golden Blade Warrior Tabi Toxic Blade Malice. Do you like this?
I'm actually so glad you brought it up, because I think Malice is potentially the most slept on crit item in the game. I can't build it without someone complaining at me, but if you just look at it, it's got such good stats. 40 power, 25% crit, and cooldown. That's a stat stick that you want on just about any jungler, and the passive is so strong. The second this Nemesis moves in, dashes in to close the distance, uses Slice and Dice to set him up, lands a couple crits, that's 3 seconds off of all those cooldowns. It's going to get so much value. Nemesis traditionally is, once her dashes are down, we have to go on her because she's got just about no survivability left after that. With Malice, it's going to be really hard to keep track of those cooldowns.
It is going to be difficult. You might have thought you were safe, but Nemesis is already a pretty widely one, even without that extra cooldown math. They're trying to do a good wall from inbound, but that's one of the few people that can just walk away. Fullerburn Mike does not use the Sunder on the Nike Ultimate this time. Now it comes out to try and lock him down, but it might have been too late. Panda Cat's in trouble. Sino falls, as does Ducky, though. A double kill for Captain Twig as they get inbound, too. All of them locked inside that Pillar of Agony. I'm sure they don't mind trading Panda Cat for 3 members of Obey.
Look, I said it earlier, Obey, if you're focusing anyone that isn't Captain Twig, it's a misplay. Immediately we saw the majority of Obey dive onto Panda Cat, Sanctified Field comes down, and he just turns into a chainsaw from a distance, ripping through everyone grouped up, and no one Obey could move, no one on Obey could jump out, because they used everything to close the gap. It's just a weird timed fight for Obey to choose to go in there, especially considering Gold Cree's up. I understand the thought process. They want to get the kill, move back to gold, and try and force a fight there. It just didn't work out.
Stewart kind of putting the hands to Fine OK here, and he doesn't even get the heal off. Stewart does still use both relics in fear. I think probably wouldn't deny a potential heal to Fine OK just to show how much respect he's earned at this point. But all is well. They get the kill onto Fine OK either way. And this is the great thing about us coming into this new meta. There's so many builds to try and keep up with. I'm falling behind a little bit, but the Berserker Shield picked up for Wolfie. This is an item you heard me talk about in the SPL waiting room and how I think it's strong on these hunters right now. Do you like it picked up third here when you've got a Nemesis jungle on the other side?
I would have liked to see it. If you want to go for the Berserker Shield, traditionally we see it towards the first item very early on in the build. It's going to help him out a lot once he does fall low, and against Nemesis it is pretty good. Nemesis is going to drop that burst damage instantly, take about 30% of your health bar, so anything afterwards should be able to proc that shield for him. But Berserker Shield in general on Chernobog, he's not going to be trying to fight at low health. He doesn't have the lifesteal to sit staying through it.
Panda Cat in trouble, goes back in and drops the Suns, perhaps recognizing there was no world where he lived, so he tried to put out the maximum amount of damage. But look at this Robey. They say, to hell with trying to split up and farm. We've got a group at this point. Ghosts are 9,000 gold ahead, and right now it's working. But I don't know if they can brute force down this tier 2 tower. Fine, OK, tries to get to the back line. Frozen right away, does get the Pillar of Agony off, but is it going to be enough for him? Captain Twig in the back still has the damage. They take care of 2, and Obey Alliance's new strategy has not worked. Sam gets the Slice and Dice onto 2 members, able to battle through Stewart. It cost him his life, but sets up for the rest of the squad to clean the rest of the kills up.
Look, credit where it is due. Final K jumps in to engage that fight, and Stewart perfectly lands the axe to make sure that no follow-up comes through. Final K can't use his 3, can't start channeling the ultimate, doesn't fear anyone, but the burst damage just wasn't there from Obey. They were able to drop him to about 20%, and having him not die there means that, well, you just lost the fight. You blew your entire kits onto this tanky, lifesteal-focused Hades, and then, again, Captain Twig shows up. Look, we're talking about effective tankiness,
okay.
With all this lifesteal, Ring of Akate, the Shoes of Magi, the Typhon's Fang, my man is going to lifesteal more than any defense would have mattered to him. But they couldn't do it. They just couldn't finish him off, and then what happened again. Every single team fight, Captain Twig rotates in late and gets free casting rights on every member of Obey.
And speaking of Captain Twig, we saw Doug point this out earlier as well, just haven't had a chance to hit on it yet, that he started working on some physical defense. I thought this might have been a breastplate of valor. It's something pretty common we see on our mid lane mages, but instead it was the hide of the Nemean lion. This has got to be, I'm thinking, to help him out with this Nemesis, and I think it's something that we'll see a little bit more on these mages in the middle lane when they're worried about these auto-attack assassins from the jungle.
Auto-attack assassins as well as the double hunter from Obey. I mean, it's going to get value, but with there's so many people trying to auto-attack you, those stacks aren't going to last very long. I like the pickup on to this Captain Twig in particular, just because he knows if he does tank up a couple of auto attacks, it could cost him his life. Instead, now he drops Sanctified Field, knocks up, and just runs away, uses that time to survive.
It's another good wall from inbound, but it just does not matter. Sino dies instantaneously in the backline, and they've got to run. They cannot afford to fight Ghosts with the Fire Giant buff on everyone but Sam. It's too strong, and inbound has been isolated in the middle lane, avoids the stun from Panda Cat, but Captain Twig's on the warpath as well. A wall will allow him some breathing room as Ducky and Wolfie were in trouble in left. The Undying Love has to come out from the Aphrodite as they continue to retreat. They know at this point they cannot afford to stand and fight Ghost in the jungle. They just can't.
Speaking of Aphrodite, take a peek at Ducky's build. No items in particular are interesting, except for the fact that he doesn't have any items. He's only 4 in. This Aphro is struggling.
It really is, and that's been a result of Final Case pressure in solo. But what about the pressure onto the mid Phoenix? Obey only have 4 members here to defend and very few ultimates to work with. Wolfie in trouble right away, can't even return fire because of Thorns. That's a ton of space created, and Ghost burned down the middle Phoenix easily. But Final K will not settle for that, continues to push forward, looking for inbound. The Riptide continues to pull him back in, but they don't have the damage. Ghost Gaming are on the run after getting their Phoenix.
I mean, call it on the run. I'll call it a victory lap for Ghost Gaming at this point. 14,000 gold, 22 minutes in. But Obey have been fighting in incredibly well. It doesn't always seem like they're just going to lose out on these engagements. But despite all that, despite all these perfectly placed mechanical plays, this lead is making itself known just by the fact that no one on the side of Ghost Gaming is really falling in these engagements. Nemesis already picked up the Wind Demon, movement speed, attack speed, crit, everything you need Nemesis has in this build so far. I'll be surprised to see if he doesn't elect to go towards a more penetration-focused item once he sells the Assassin's Blessing. But Captain Twig just decides to finish up his build. 6th item, going to lock in that Typhon's Fang. Additional penetration, additional lifesteal. That passive is going to get a lot of value when you've already got lifesteal on your boots and you have it on the Ring of Akate. Run is going to chunk anybody. No one's allowed to tank more than 6 auto attacks from this guy, and we haven't even touched on the fact that he's the only magical ADC that crits. He is doing insane burst damage already as well.
You're absolutely right. This is going to be scary trying to deal with him. We haven't had much chance to talk about these Hunter builds yet because they really have not had that much to do with how the game has gone, kind of as we predicted. But we are starting to see some of those changes that show up in their build as well. No Executioner picked up by either Hunter. Instead, you see the Atlantis Bow slotted in oftentimes where the Executioner would have been. And that's your percent pen item. You're going to pick that up in that slot a lot. We see Panda Cat go the Ikfio Kin size afterwards, a much more attack speed focused build, as opposed to Stuart, who's doing pretty standard Uller things, which is you just want to buy almost every item in the pin tree.
I like the build from Stuart. I mean, that's about as standard as it gets. Sliding into Atalanta's that late in the build is a bit of a question mark. If you're going to go towards that ability-focused build, I'd prefer to see maybe something along the lines of Titan's Bane, something that works like that.
Sam for soccer fighting too, uses the Nemesis shield well, but now he's in trouble. Avoids the hits from Sino. How is Sam still alive? But there's no way he lives, right? Meanwhile, the rest of Ghost are pressuring in left. They've already gotten the Phoenix inbound low as well, so the Undying Love forced out, but the Pillar of Agony has caught in too. Stewart falls first. Ducky's right there behind him, and somehow Sam still stands tall. A perfect fight across the map from Ghost Gaming as they surge onto the Titan of Obey Alliance. This might be game 1 over already.
We're looking at a 60% on the Titan's health right now, and we gotta talk about PBM's Riptides. They're decimating Obey.
They don't know where to run because there is nowhere to run. Ghost Gaming, 25 minutes on the clock, win our very first game here in the SPL Phase 2. And if this is how it's looking right now, I'm excited for this to continue.
Look, I didn't know that we were going to keep track of our votes as casters for these games. I didn't know that Inbound was going to pick Ymir so late into the draft into that Ghost Gaming draft. If I want to go on record and change my vote now, Ghost is looking dominant. There was not a single point in that game where I thought Obey was turning it around.
I would like to give some credit to Stewart there as well, man. I don't think that he played particularly poorly. In fact, he played well. I just think it was kind of out of his hands as far as it goes for a sub. So I don't think he looked too bad with that Obey pick. But either way, we'll get it back over to the desk.
Enjoyed game number 1. It's been a little bit there. It's been a minute, so I figured I'd catch up on some fan mail here and really work through some of this with you guys. The first one says, "Hey Dolson, we love your casting. Please keep it up." Oh, thanks guys. It's a very, very nice first one there. The next one, Dolson, we love your casting and your chair ads, is what I would say if it were opposite day. Oh, that's a bummer. Here's the third one. Hey, Dolson, make sure to remind the people to use code SMITEMAX for free embroidery. Everyone, make sure to go to needforseat.com. Use code SMITEMAX, and you get free name embroidery on your chair. And then the fourth and final one. Hey, Dolson, we are happy to send you a chair. We are hoping that means you'll stop leaving 3 a.m. voicemails in our office asking for a free Hera-themed chair. So that one's, I don't know where that one came from. Gormizer, I'll levy the question to you, though. What'd you see here in Game 1 that gave Ghost Gaming the win?
Oh my god, so many different things that stand out there, and it's really difficult to jump into what goes best and maybe what was first and foremost at the front. But it's kind of hard not to talk about Fine OK at that point. I mean, a good slash line on the Hades. He brought it in against Aphrodite, of all things, and it ended up working out really well for him. Straight into the lifesteal boots, then he goes Ring of Hecate, then he goes Typhon's Fang. Already with so much healing in his kit from Devour Souls just makes it intrinsically difficult for anyone to keep up with his healing, to the point where I think Finch called it out, Mifflin called it out. His effective tankiness was the fact that he would heal, you'd hit him, you could take him down to halfway, and within a second, maybe 2 seconds, which is a very quick amount of time, he'd be back to full health. He had no worries whatsoever over there. Once he got that sovereignty online, forget about trying to melt him down. I think he was just so tanky. He goes for that Thorns as well. I mean, he played it exactly the way you needed him to go 7-2.
Yeah, the early game just kind of got out of control here, and I think a conversation to be had around Ring of Hecate here as well. This is really where it started, Gore. 3 minutes into the game, Fine OK receives a gank, gets first blood over onto Ducky, and this Hades just kind of snowballed out of control. Ended up picking up the Ring of Hecate, as I mentioned. Obviously, Finch and Mifflin maybe scratching their heads a little bit at that one. But maybe this is just such a good item that if you're able to build it, you might need to.
Yeah, honestly, I think it showcases, like you said, where the item is good, and maybe just how good it's going to be. If you're picking it up on Hades, who, well, maybe he's not a quote-unquote auto-attacker the way that Freya is, or Kronos, or Oleron is, it does still apply for Hades in his kit. Just being able to put that Blight onto your enemies and have that ready for any time that you use your Devour Souls, I think it's going to work out incredibly well for them. The fact that he was also using Shroud of Darkness, getting that silence appropriately timed to help lock down Aphro, so either A, you can't heal, or B, you can't ult fast enough, it made it so much easier to use that Pillar of Agony to lock her down, and her effectiveness tanked because of that. And granted, maybe there's somewhere in there that you could look at, well, how do you pick up for it? If Aphrodite's not doing well, theoretically Nike can, right? But PBM goes into that Sunder. It's destroying the Nike shield the minute she ults. They just... Obey came in with a Phase 1 strat, and Ghost just Phase 2 the hell out of it and destroy it.
Yeah, as if we expected anything different from Ghost here in game number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick break prior to game number 2. We'll see you back here.
You can say what you want, I'll do what I want. Maybe tomorrow we could see things differently, but the way it's going right now, we better put it on hold. It's your 17th message in 17 minutes. I can't reply no more, my head's not in it. Told me to shut you down, but I'ma put down this phone.
Appreciate the patience, everybody. Welcome back to day one of phase 2 of season 7 of the SPL Gormizer. We saw a 25-minute game number 1 that saw Ghost just kind of blow Obey out of the water. We talked a little bit about the composition that Ghost brought to the table. Haven't quite talked about Obey's yet, the double hunter mindset we figured we might see with one magical ADC and one normal ADC. But it was the double hunter, traditional hunter, I suppose, composition there for Obey. Do you think that has really any merit in the current meta?
Honestly, I don't know that it's going to continue working, or work at all, I guess, at this point. Specifically, well, I think for Ghost, I should say, it's going to work fine, right? Having a magical hunter come through, I was thinking on Obey's side, not good for Obey. Good for Ghost. And you know, the thing I wrote, like, literally one of the last things I wrote was, turns out, Ghost is still just good at Smite, huh? I don't know that it matters much of what they're going to play there. I think the double hunter, the fact that Ring of Hecate is just so damn good, you could bring in an Ola run, you could bring in a Freya if she doesn't get banned, you could bring in a Soul. I mean, I've been looking for clues here, Dave, and trying to figure out what exactly, and my notes all point specifically towards the fact that what was working best for Obey, specifically coming in as that Nike in phase 1, it's out the window now, just like the notebook is. Nothing that you had written down for phase 1, I think, is going to apply here. You have to come in with a new strat.
You got a good arm there, Gore, if that made it all the way out
Where did that go?
The window on the other side of the room. I don't know. He's got to find it. We'll give him a second. Picks and bans, though, for game number 2 and see what these two teams opt to swing for. Remember, the Cthulhu ban was something we figured we might see. Persephone as well. Outside of Nemesis, obviously an interesting jungle pick. For the first bit of data we have out of the jungle. Haven't really seen the presence, whether it be in the ban phase or in the pick phase, for some of the other traditional auto-attacking junglers that we figured we might see.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I mean, Nemesis obviously worked well there, and I think against Obey's composition it is fit perfectly, right? Granted, it comes up, there's two things working against Nemesis there, maybe a third one, which is her ultimate timer. It's on 100 seconds. You've got 110 seconds on that upgraded Sunder that PBM was running, and then you've got the Nemesis ult. In the event the Sunder's not ready, along with that shield, the healing from Yamoja, the lifesteal from Ring of Hecate on Olerun and Hades, you couldn't choose a single target to kill. If you weren't winning a team fight, you're not winning anything here. And so I think Obey are going to have to change up a lot of where their focus is, and honestly a lot of where they are and who they are at heart, because a lot of that identity felt like an Obey composition, and Ghost dismantled it. I mean, maybe it all comes down to the fact that FineOK got level 5 just a smidge there before Aphrodite to make that really good gank happen early on, but I think there's a lot of layers underneath that as well, where Ghosts are, right now, they're just being Ghost.
Yeah, we sort of talked preseason as a talent team, and then obviously through some content pieces, like who would be most improved, and Obey is kind of an easy answer there because they have the most ground to improve on. I would argue Ghosts don't. They're the opposite. They're already like kind of where they want to be. Obviously can continue to be better, but this is going to be such a difficult first matchup for Obey, especially given their substitute standpoint here. Not out of it just yet, though. Remember, these are best of 3, so a chance for Obey to go back-to-back and take this set over Ghost Gaming. Freya makes it through the ban phase, Gormizer, and it looks like Ghost might be opting for Freya here with their second overall pick. Pair that one with Yamoja, and Ghost got more of the same from game number 1.
All right, Dave, so I'm ready to go ahead and go into the second set of the day. I'm going to start talking about E United because you get Yamoja back, you get Freya, and with these new items, Freya, already passive lifesteal that comes through. Looks good, already there. 2 to 3 shot people when you get your item build online. Late game, she's a monster. Early game, yeah, maybe you have to hold on a little bit in lane. Your first 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes might not be the cleanest. You're going to have to sit back. You've got Yamoja beside you, though, so your clear is going to be fine. Your healing's going to be fine. They can honestly still take fights early on against this Uller if they want to. Maybe second guess it with the Ymir there, so you might want to, kind of check yourself before you jump into it. And then she gets Ring of Hecate online, and at that point in time, I do not see Obey having a very fun game for the remaining however many minutes after that. Once that Ring of Hecate comes online for Freya, it is, I think, going to severely hurt the members of Obey. Nuwa, who's going to have a difficult time trying to escape her anyway, it's going to be downhill. Then you go into a hastened ring, and all of a sudden she's chasing you down. Your Ymir, it doesn't matter if you slow her. You can try to freeze her. If she has her beads up, she might just pop it to keep chasing the kill. That's going to be priority number 1, target number 1. And honestly, it's going to be difficult because, yeah, maybe Hunters aren't making the big swing right now, but if you're focusing this Freya, that means Sam on this Nemesis can pop off. FineOK with whatever he decides to run can pop off and look good doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the Ola run was one of many issues, I suppose, in game number 1, and more of the same for Ghost Gaming. A lot of those issues re-picked up here through the first 3 picks for Ghost Gaming. They being Obey, seem to think that this is going to be a Freya over in the long lane. Traditional mages now being banned out against Captain Twig there by Obey. Remember, it was a Ho Yi in the long lane with the Ola run in the mid lane there in game number 1. Ele's banned out, and Gore, maybe most interestingly so far, it's a set ban for Ghost Gaming with their 5th and final.
No, I think Set, especially with a lot of the new items, he works well with it. I mean, one, being able to potentially bring in something like a serrated edge and pick that up is very solid for him early on. You can get those cooldowns kind of out of there. His damage at the very beginning is going to help burst you down, then he can follow up with some auto attacks. He is definitely up there, I think, with Pele in terms of rising... Well, just junglers all of a sudden. Assassins that maybe couldn't have worked too well before that are going to come in, much, I think, like this Nemesis can qualify herself as. I'm wondering what Obey are going to log in. The Chaka is definitely throwing me, not necessarily for a loop. I think he's going to be interesting, but the Nox is what I was waiting for. It's either a Chaka or a Nox in the jungle, and if I had to prefer one, it is the Chaka. But it's an interesting shape. Yes.
I will say, I don't remember exactly when the content piece is coming out. This Nox in the solo lane is something Ducky has told me he's comfortable with. So
Yeah.
if I'm taking kind of old data points and conversations I've had, it might actually be this Nox in the solo lane, a Thor to round out the Ghost Gaming draft in the jungle there for San Soccer. Gore, the Phase 2 meta continues here. Maybe Obey have dipped into it just a little bit. Do you like one composition over the other for Game 2?
I like where Obey's head is at. Between the Chalk and the Nox, there's going to be a lot of silences, along with the Ymir freeze and the stun coming down from Nuwa. You could theoretically control the pace of a team fight. That being said, a lot of these things are going to need to not only connect, but you're going to have to work them together. Nox, you can't afford to miss your combo. Chalk, you've got this nice big ultimate, but if it only hits 2 people, the other 3 that are standing by in a team fight are still going to shred you. I think their head's in the right place. It's all going to be execution. And that's where things fall apart for me. I think Ghosts do not let you execute your draft at the highest level. That's why they are number 1. You can pick whatever you want. They tend to tear you down. And I think with all the damage on there, I mean, a Habwa, a Thor, a Nemesis, they're just going to melt through the members of Obey.
Well, it's time for Obey to turn this one around. Game number 2, Finch and Myth. Who do you think comes out on top?
Thank you, Dolson and Gore on the desk. You know, Myth, I knew we'd have to talk about Freya at some point, but I did not think we'd be talking about Freya on the second pick team. A bit surprising to me that Obey don't ban it and pick the Uller over it, but perhaps they can show us a way to keep this Freya in check. What do you think here, Myth? Was this one lost in picks and bans, or do you like what Obey have?
Look, Obey's draft is, as Gore pointed out, incredibly execution-focused. Every single one of these picks has decent CC, but not a single one of them has the kill potential on their own. If Ymir finds a freeze, if Stuart finds an axe, it's going to take a lot more than just those individual pieces to find these kills, and they're going to have to work through all sorts of stuff. The second that Panda Cat gets his ultimate available, you're going to have to work through that. Beads and Aegis as well. Ducky's going to be having an equally hard time on this Nox, I'd say. I've seen it a lot on his stream. If you keep track of Ducky's Twitch, he's playing this pick and rank an awful lot, and he's seen some pretty moderate success with it, but even then, this is Ghost Gaming. This is the Phase 1 champions. This is going to be very hard for Obey to find a footing.
It's going to be difficult. I mean, I just think that this same draft could work against an easier opponent. I mean, Freya Yamojis, the top 2 picks for Ghost, it feels like something has gone critically wrong from where I'm sitting, if that's how the other team gets to draft their top 2 picks. But perhaps Obey can show us a way to slow down all of this momentum. Remember, Freya's still not quite that powerhouse state until she has Hekate and her ult, as there's action already in mid, but Twig and Sam for Soccer are able to navigate it deftly and end up without being in too much trouble.
Look, Obey's entire strategy has to revolve around shutting down Panda Cat in the early game. The second that he hits level 12 and gets Aegis, he gets the Ring of Hekate as well. This god is going to be nigh uncontestable. I don't think a single 3 members of Obey's draft can take on Panda Cat once he starts to hit stride in his build. That said, pre-5, Freya's a little bit weaker. Still, he's going to have pretty decent lifesteal, sustain, and damage. He's got all of that. But as far as survivability goes, this Freya is going to be struggling. It's going to be up to Stuart and Inbound to make sure that this doesn't get rolling.
But what about this Warrior Jungle kick that Sino is on? I certainly understand with the Nike, but this Chalk jungle is not something that we see very often. I mean, I thought perhaps it might be going to solo lane, but Sino has shown that he likes to play these Warriors here. How do you expect this Chalk to do in this matchup?
Chalk is going to have decent damage. He's going to have sustain throughout the jungle. He's going to do the majority of the same things. It's going to be completely reliant, again, on that ultimate. He has to find those ultimates to just silence out the enemy, get the burst damage out, and pray that his mid laner, Wolfie, is able to finish up the kills. Chalk's got so much damage on his own, and Inbound picks up first blood. Chalk has so much damage on his own that even if someone does escape away from him, Wolfie on this Nuwa should be able to pick up the kill with the ultimate. But that said, Chalk isn't going to outscale Nemesis. Chalk isn't going to outscale the solo lane Thor. Again, Obey's draft is telling me that they're trying to win quick and early.
Chalk is how you do that, and it's not a bad way to start either when you can find first blood in the middle lane. Twig did not have the beads available, and Inbound, with the oldest trick in the book, waited around the corner and found a freeze when Twig stepped up too far. So a much better way for Obey to start this game. Remember back in game 1, Myth, Ghost wasn't just beating them in every lane. They had duo or solo side pressure. They were invading the blue buff essentially on cooldown, and that's what really got Fine so far ahead of Ducky on that Aphrodite pick. maybe if they can start getting some pressure in other areas, they can prevent a run back of the same thing that went wrong in the first game.
I don't even think that Ghost's strategy here is that same level of pressure because they were afforded so many late-game, high-tier pieces. I don't think Ghost cares if this game goes 40 minutes. They have a Habwa and they have a Freya. Yamoja scales incredibly well. Nemesis scales incredibly well into the late game. If Ghost wins out early, power to them. They shouldn't have. If Ghost takes it to late game, power to them. That's exactly where they want to be. Again, a lot of the onus is on Obey to make sure that things start going very well in the early, because the second they all get the late game, the 5-on-5 engagements, Ghost Gaming should be able to run away with it with a draft that they have.
I think you might be a bit worried about some of those picks from Obey if things do end up getting a bit later on in this game. So you imagine they want things skewed a bit early. We might finally see some duo lane action as Inbound looks for another surprise gank. Panda Cat's taking a ton of damage. Good patience on the freeze, and the Frey is in trouble. But in comes the shielding. Panda Cat hits level 5, so Valkyrie Discretion is here as well. And Ghost Gaming get their first kill. We said get there before she's 5, but I guess if she turns 5 in the middle of the fight, we could forgive.
That was unparalleled trigger discipline from Panda Cat. I love it. He just keeps auto-attacking the wave, knowing that his survive condition is buy a little bit of time with the lifesteal that he already has, and to just get to level 5 so he can ult out of a sticky situation. I love the play.
Might uses the River's Rebuke to lock down Sino, but his only Chuck can, able to teleport to that axe and make his way out of there without too much trouble. He ends up using the Blink as well. He did go Blink Chuck to try and start this game off, and it helps him get a little bit further away from trouble there. But you talked about this already, If you want to try and stop Freya, it feels like it has to happen early, and I think Inbound and Obey did a lot of things right. They were so patient with their freezes and spacing out their CC, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, the counter rotation from Ghost Game immediately. The shell lands on a Panda Cat. The healing from Yamoja. There was too much damage from him to burst through there. And now Freya, backed up, is going to be able to get the full boots if Panda Cat so chooses, or can immediately move into Ring of Hecate for that early trade potential. Instead, yeah, Ring of Hecate is online. The Uller matchup into Freya now. If Uller doesn't kill Freya with the initial ability rotation, I don't care if he's on 5% health afterward, Panda Cat's going to get just about a full heal off of a wave.
It's going to be tough for him now. Inbound still, though, lurking around the corner. This has been a lot of their strategy around this Amir pick, because this is twice in a row that Inbound has picked Amir with a lot of really good Guardians still out there. Ganesh and Capri come to mind, even some of the other aggressive supports like Hercules, but they have wanted this Amir. He's going to have to show us more of this value of waiting around in the jungle, finding good walls, making sure they can lock down the right people with these freezes, or otherwise the Amir pick is absolutely not worth it.
It isn't, but the recent Ymir buffs do make it a little bit easier to execute on. You can get rid of the wall if you so choose. Even if you die while channeling the ultimate, you're going to get a percentage of that damage. This ain't the way to start, though, Bobby.
Yeah, Panda Cat able to use the ultimate, get out of any and all trouble very easily. Slow use from range to prevent Inbound from closing the gap. And you're starting to see what can make Freya so difficult to gank. She did not have beads there. That was a well-timed gank from Inbound in terms of keeping that cooldown in his mind. But it's just so hard to kill her, which he has the Valkyrie's discretion.
It is. I was surprised to see Sam for Soccer decide to back off of that engagement after the ultimate came through, just immediately walks away. Panda Cat found a huge amount of damage onto Inbound there, was easily within kill range if he had any assistance. Instead, Ghost Gaming played a little bit slow, play it safe, don't overcommit. They knew that Sino was in the jungle, he showed up on a ward, so instead they just go back to farming, which should be their strategy. They have a Freya.
More trouble now as Sam for Soccer looks to try and grab Stewart. Gets the beads out from him, but will not continue the chase underneath the tower. Inbound meets him in the jungle, but Sam not worried about one lone Amir all by himself as the dive underneath the right side tier 1 is underway. Sino ends up trading his life to get the kill on Define. Okay, I don't know. I mean, sure, he shut him down, but you want your jungler up and farming.
You do. I would say that's a decent trade if your effort is trying to put Ducky ahead. He should be able to force Final K into missing about 2 or 3 minions there, but even then, Nox is not a god you pick in the soul lane so that she can rotate out. That's a god that's going to be sitting over there, farming up as much as it possibly can, and then rotate in once the late game starts to roll around. Get ready for these team fights. Putting Ducky ahead this early on in the match, especially at the cost of your own life, might be a slight misplay, especially considering Sam for Soccer's playing Nemesis, this late game hyper carry. Chalk, Sino has to stay afloat. I would say at this point, you would really want to see the Chalk ahead.
You would, and I think that Fino K certainly messed up the math there from Sino. I think he expected to get out because of just how low Fino K was, but Fino K somehow was able to buy a ton of time on low HP and still make it out, so good work to him, at least in that regard, of buying as much time as possible and guaranteeing the return kill. You talked earlier about how Obey had a good start to this game, but you can tell already the gold is really close to being even back up, the experience too, and now Fino K ganking like a jungler into his own lane, dunking it right down on top of Ducky, perfectly spacing the CC. Just not enough damage to kill through that Celestial Legion helm, but they're going to dive underneath the tower. The ultimate comes out from the Noxus Silence is there too. Ducky still standing even now, but there's just no world where he survives when they're willing to commit that many resources.
And then Wolfie picks up the kill on the tail end with the ultimate. That was a well-executed tower dive there. Fino K doesn't move in himself. Instead, just soaks up the aggro from the tower to create some space and allow Sam Soccer to maneuver around. But Ducky finds his abilities, as you have to do on the Nox, and is able to turn it into a 1-for-1. Clean play, but even then, Obey needs more.
Crushing wave a little bit off the mark there from Twig. That would certainly have been a solo kill in the Wolfie, and you could tell he wants it now. Diving underneath the tier 1 tower, trying to find this kill, and gets it. Wolfie ends up falling. A lot of tower dive happening, as Captain Twig has certainly thrown his life away at this point. Inbound is the one that's on the chase here for him as he tries to come back underneath the tier 1 tower. He might be able to get away. He's got speed buff. He's quick.
He's got speed buff and the water carpet. With the pathing he's taken, I think he's decided that there's really not worth the risk. Instead, trade out my life or try and sneak it back. A little bit greedy, but no one's able to confirm it. That's a well-played back from Captain Twig. He knows, okay, if someone does show up, I'm going to sacrifice myself. If no one shows up, I get out alive. Clean play. And it's just disrespectful play from Ghost. I would say of their 4 kills, 3 have been tower dives, just individually within their own lanes. Twig walked in alone with no backup into the tier 1 mid tower, just turned it around. Ghost Gaming is looking to send a message.
It feels that way, trying to let Obey know that nowhere is safe for them at this point in the game. Still, though, the charts tell us that this is a relatively even match, but you've already kind of done this analysis for me here, Myth. Ghosts are okay with an even early game because they are so heavily favored in the late just due to their composition and how well they scale into that portion of the game. Obey Alliance are going to need to find a little bit more pressure. They want to turn this around as a well-placed ward spots out Sam's positioning on the right side of the map.
But Obey's got a lead in the duo lane right now, but it looks like they're trying to force the fight in mid instead. The ultimate is forced from Nuwa.
And Ducky drops early. Rivers of Bucus locked 2 members underneath the tier 1 towers. Panda Cat getting the better of Stewart despite the experience deficit. Obey start to rotate to the left. They're trying to leave mid, but they walk right back into Twig and Mike's waiting arms. A good freeze comes out, but Twig has the beads. No ultimate though, and Stewart gets the return kill. Now Mike is stuck in between several members, but the Freya comes in from the backside. Wolfie gets 1 kill. Panda Cat gets the second. Sam able to melt Wolfie, and so far a 3-for-2 in favor of Ghost, and they still got the Freya up if they can lock down Sino.
Look, and the chase is still on. If the whoop is available and it connects with anybody, it could result in a kill for Ghost, but instead, Panda Cat's going to go ahead and give up on the chase. Sam's going to strip away some of that jungle farm. I said last game to Obey, if you're not focusing Olo Run, you're going to lose the fight. You can switch it now. If you're not focusing Panda Cat on this Freya, you're gonna lose the fight. If any sort of CC is being used and it's not finding its home on Freya, that means that's free cast time. It's free damage for this Freya. We saw that 3 auto attacks was enough to do about 50% of Sino's health bar. 3 auto attacks did about 50% of inbounds as well. Panda Cat needs to be the priority from Obey in these engagements.
Taking a look at the support builds here, Myth, because builds, I think, have to be the big storyline coming in here after the mid-season update. It looks like Polar Bear Mike has chosen to forego the Gauntlet of Thebes, largely considered the best item a support can get here at this point, especially if they're not physical and can't pick up something like Sledge. Do you like the Urchin being picked up with how aggressive they've been playing?
It's the only thing that would make up for this pickup, right? If you're going to play as aggressive as Ghost has been, you're going to get those stacks online pretty quickly. And just take a peek at the Thebes 4 inbound. We're 13 minutes in the game just about, and he has it halfway stacked. That means that he hasn't really had much time to farm because of the pace set in this match. Ghost and Obey are constantly looking for dives, so this Urchin should get more relative value the longer this game goes on.
Interesting from Ghost. Perhaps this aggressive all-in gas pedal strat is something that's coming a little bit more top-down than we may have thought just off the builds. And look at this. Sam again showing presence in solo, but Mike in trouble too. Able to use that Riptide to reposition, gets away from the wall from inbound. And that has got to be pretty close to the best-case scenario, a wall to lock in some immobile characters, and even still, Obey can't convert it.
I would be surprised if Inbound doesn't elect to level his wall second over the freeze just because of all the immobile targets on the side of Ghost. We saw that lockdown was good, but the wall just didn't last long enough.
Another good wall. That means the freeze connects onto Captain Twig, who's in an awful position. Does get the crushing wave off for next to zero value. Avoids getting hit by the ultimate from one, but the second from Wolfie is that much better. But straight up and down goes Fine OK, trying to dunk into the backline. But Obey still standing relatively strong. They have pushed Ghost back out and gotten a free pick. This is huge for the Order side team. And look at Stewart feeling himself point blank up against Panda Cat, but that's risky. He does not have the Valkyrie's discretion, but gets some help from Sam to turn the fight around, and now Wolfie in trouble too, but Stewart's still there, finds the damage, puts Panda Cat down. Wolfie will fall as well as it continues to be a bloodbath across the map.
Let that be a lesson to Stewart and the rest of Obey. Do not step up against the Freya unless you know you can put them down quickly. Panda Cat did so much damage and bought so much time that Ghost was able to turn this fight into a clean 2 for 2.
You did give Mike some credit, so I'll say I'm not giving Mike enough credit for how sick these Riptides have been. It might cost him his life here as Stewart and Inbound continue the chase, but he had a great one over the wall to stop Inbound from chasing Sam underneath the tower. Another good one to allow him to reposition later on, and now Inbound chasing a bit too far is suddenly catching up to Captain Twig, full health and full mana. You never chase the kill because you end up walking into backup.
Yeah, don't chase the kill that long for sure, and we know the communication center from Obey was saying, alright, let it go. Stewart immediately disengaged after the wave, went as far back as he could, but Inbound, kind of seeing red, just moves up a little bit too far into the enemy jungle. Clean rotation from Captain Twig off of a respawn in that team fight, finds himself a pretty nice kill there. I mean, Obey's been able to find these small footholds throughout the duration of the match, but even then, they haven't established themselves a lead.
Captain Twig uses the ultimate to reposition from Sino. He needed it because he was certainly in some trouble. Twig has gone with Blink instead of Aegis as Sino gets deleted. Final case showing the solo lane Thor could put out the damage too. He's got Runic Shield, Shifters, and it looks like he might be working on either a Pridwin or an Arendite. He'll have plenty on the back end of this current build to continue making this Thor strong.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Final K will be looking towards the Arendite. Sino, instead of going this new item build that was expecting, maybe a Sledge would have worked out very well in this chalk, he instead elects to go this very assassin-focused build. Brawler's Beatstick, Arendite. Looks like he's finally going to move into a Runic Shield or potentially an Anchile. This build is nice, but he's not going to get an insane amount of value. His burst potential is still pretty low, and he's not tanky at all, which is going to result in exactly what we just saw. Any CC that finds itself home onto Sinosure should result in a kill for Ghost Gaming.
And so far it has. We talked about the magical ADC builds and how it might be Hecate, Lifesteal Boots into Rings and Magus. But look here from Panda Cat. He just wants to step on the gas. Hasten to Ring is his third item overall. And I think if you're feeling yourself on Freya, it's hard to get a better item, even though I think Demonic Grip's pretty core for her. But Hasten Ring is similarly a strong power spike.
I would say that Panda Cat right now, even despite not having any penetration in the build, the power spike that you get from Ring of Hecate on its own and the lifesteal / sustain is going to be enough to make up for the fact that he's missing out on a little bit of that burst potential. So Hastened Ring's just going to keep him involved in these fights as long as possible. Stewart's got a 2-level lead though. Panda Cat has to be worried.
That's true. Stewart's played very well this set, I think, overall, even in Game 1 and now here in Game 2. Twig has his beads forced, as it was Obey who pulled the Gold Fury. Riptide pulls 2 members back in, but the Rivers Review a bit off the mark, allows for them to escape. Final K doesn't find much with his dunk either, but Sam has gotten to the back line, forced the new off into the air, and the shield continues to buy him time. Now the Valkyrie's discretion being used aggressively, fully on retreat is Obey Alliance, as Ghost Gaming continues to swarm. Look at the Riptide. There is nowhere for Inbound to go as Twig gets the double, and Ghost can head right back towards Gold Fury.
Panda Cat just W-keyed the entire time. Sino, where are you going?
He goes back in, immediately gets banished, and has to use the beads. Obey have got to be thinking carefully about how they re-engage on this Gold Fury.
no ultimates available. Ducky's coming up soon, so there's no snipe steal potential. Cyno can't re-engage either without his ultimate. They just have to let gold go. That's the best call they could have made, which is still a pretty poor one, because now we're looking at a 5,000 gold deficit in favor of Ghost Gaming. That fight started to go poorly for Obey. The second that Panda Cat showed up, he pressed 2, he pressed 1, he pressed W, and no one on the side of Obey was able to stop him. And it's just going to continue going that way because Obey doesn't have a safe way to engage deep onto him. The rest of Ghost Gaming is playing the Spearhead draft. Final K was the deepest one. Obey tried to peel back and kill him while taking shots to the back from Freya the entire time. Someone's got to stop the damage coming through from Panda Cat.
And to be fair, I don't know what more you can ask than for your sub to be 2 levels ahead of Panda Cat, who I think you can make the argument is just the best hunter in the world right now. It's very impressive to me what Stuart's been able to do. I think the real failing for my man Stuart was in the picks and ban space. It's hard to outvalue a Freya even when you're playing better, as Pyromancer being looked at by Obey Alliance. They have frozen out Sam for soccer to try and keep him at bay, but they have to drop the objective. Unbound stays on the front side of the fight as he continues to move up aggressively, but Ghost Gaming aren't going to give him anything for free. Obey come right back to the Pyro, but they're not even going to start that up. They're fully dropping it.
Let what happened in Duo Lane a couple of seconds ago, we saw it on the mini-map. Panda Cat was running down Stuart from nearly and a deficit. That's the strength, the relative value that Freya brings. I don't care if you're 4 levels up. I don't care if you loaded in the game 10 minutes before Panda Cat. At this point in the match, there's just about no one who can step to him.
It's really difficult to try and stop him. Ducky is in a bad spot, sandwiched between Polar Bear Mike and Fine OK, able to reposition back towards the tower, and Mike and Fine are not looking to hard commit to him here. But you're correct when you talk about Freya's value. Even when she's behind, this has not been enough. They're asking quite a bit, I think, of young man Stewart to keep him out of it to this extent. Now Pyromancer pulled again by Ghost. It's been brought down low, wall stun to keep inbound out, and Ghost secure the objective. Panda Cat not here for this fight. That might be why Obey like it so much, but the Rivers Rebuke stops Cyno from chasing down Captain Twig. The dump from Fine OK lands onto one in the back, and Cyno is suddenly low. He'll be the first casualty of this fight as inbound in trouble too, and Panda Cat steps on the gas up against Stewart to push the Uller out of the fight as well. Obey are not winning this fight on any front.
Yeah, Cyno's got a rough case of Napoleon syndrome. My man, you are not a frontliner anymore, and neither is Bobby as he's getting chased into the Tier 2 tower. But it's a war on 2 fronts. All of Ghost Gaming are chasing separate members, and it just works out everywhere. Captain Twig is going to single-handedly take away your speed. Your Tier 2 tower is going to fall. Cyno's dead, and you get a TKO on at least 3 members. Ghost can just back to base here, regroup, get some sentry wards out around fire, and force another engagement that Obey really are going to have to play perfectly if they want any chance at winning.
Look at this experience deficit, though, Myth. I feel like that's where things have truly gotten out of control. Obviously, the gold bad as well, as they're down 8,000, but it's a 4-level lead for Fine. Okay, 12,000 total is the experience gap. 4 level for Sam, 3 in the mid for Twig, 4 for Polar Bear Mike. The only place Obey is ahead is Stewart over Panda Cat, but in terms of their relative value, they're behind there as well. This has been a brutal game number 2 for Obey, because I think they've played much better than game 1. It's just they're not seeing the result.
I would say that the draft that Obey brought here would have worked last phase. It would have been just fine. It's a high execution draft, but it would have been able to fight in. But now Ghost Gaming's really students of the meta. We see Nemesis has hit a quick resurgence. They lock that one in. Fine OK playing this Thor solo is almost completely new to this phase. We didn't see that a single time in phase 1. And Panda Cat on Freya, I've said it so many times, I'm not going to say it again. That god is absolutely bonkers right now with the itemization changes. Just now picks up the Typhon's Fang, which is going to boost up lifesteal and penetration. Cyno on this chalk has gotten just about no value. He's moving up. He's finally starting to get some of that defense online. But already we saw that Captain Twig and Fine OK just kind of peppering him with some damage, took away 50% of his health, and that was through chalk sealing.
It's going to be difficult for Obey Alliance from this point. The soul leader there for Fine OK on the backside of his build. You mentioned previous Thor solos. It's kind of an SOT thing as inbound gets the 2-man freeze. Fine OK uses the beads to move right on through it. The ultimate's already been used from Wolfie as well, so they won't have that at the end for the chase potential, but they got the information that 2 members of Ghost aren't here. Fine, okay, to the sky, dunks right back down, but doesn't have the wall to follow it up. The CC chain on the Fine is good, but I don't know if that should be their focus. Way into the backline goes Sam for Soccer. He cuts everybody low, and Twig gets the first kill. Inbounds low as well. Mike cleans that one up. Valkyrie's discretion from Panda Cat allows them to get another kill as Captain Twig buries Sino as well. A double from the Habwa player means Ghost Gaming are on top, and there's just nowhere for Stewart to run. A triple for Captain Twig as Ghost Gaming get the deicide.
That might just be game. 30 seconds left on the nearest respawn. 20 for Bobby, but that's just a Ymir. Freya has taken 1 hit of damage in that entire engagement, and it's because he accidentally walked into the Phoenix after he landed from Valkyrie's discretion. No one on Obey can match him, and look at this DPS now. The Titan's not going to match him either.
No, it's over at this point. Ghost Gaming pretty dominantly, Mifflin have taken care of their first set of phase number 2. A 25-minute game for the first one, a 23-minute game for number 2. And if you thought that the playoff champs were going to come in slacking a bit, well, you just got your wake-up call.
Yeah, I think that's on me. Really glad that, I was told to put my vote in. I voted wrong, clearly. Glad that Dave pointed it out earlier that I'm the only caster that had Obey winning this one. I mean, they just seemed like they weren't ready for this meta. They didn't pick anything that I was ready for. I mean, again, just to go straight back to P's and P's, they were given the opportunity to take Freya themselves, and instead they first picked the Uller and give Ghost just run of the entirety of the new meta. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding of those picks' values, because obviously Stewart played well on the Uller. You cannot knock them for that. It's just that even playing that well, it couldn't match it, right? And everywhere else on the map fell behind, too. It's not just that Hunter matchup. They were losing across the map to Ghost here, too, so well played to Ghost in their very first game. I'll get it back to the desk, though, have them break it down from here.
Yeah, thank you, Finch and Mifflin, the only caster who voted against Ghost here. Again, Mifflin voted for Obey here in set number 1 of the weekend, and it wasn't particularly close here, Goremizer. We figured that Obey would, come in. They'd have a tough time, though. We knew this from the start, that Ghost were coming in maybe a little bit more complete, maybe a little bit stronger right off the bat. But Gore, I have to admit, I didn't expect it to be this handy. 25 minutes was the longest game we had in this set, and then a 23-minute game 2 finally puts Obey to bed here in their first game of Phase 2. I can't quite hear you there, Goremizer.
Yeah, hit that button right where I
There you
need to. Make sure I can have a voice where it comes through. I was going to highlight the Nemesis more than anything, because it really is the fact that you're picking these warrior jungles. You go to game 1, and it's a lot of the Sunder that breaks down what you're going to see out of the Nike jungle. You come here in a game 2, and you're bringing in a Chalk, but Chalk, first off, but I would love to see a list of what Chalk does well. He heals himself pretty well. I guess he's got a nice big silence, good knock-up on it. Some decent damage you can get, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's really much I can see out of him that I'm not going to get out of an assassin. Like, yes, a giant AoE silence is nice, but is it worth shredding, and losing like a Kali, a Bakasura, et cetera, you see Sam be so potent throughout all of this. Granted, he had a couple of other assassin-esque damage numbers kind of, around him, and one actual other assassin being alongside him. But once you pick up that Nemesis, inbound, he's going to struggle. Sino, he's going to struggle. They're just not going to have those innate protections they need. They're a pretty easy target for him to strip early on, and it just makes it so much easier for them to lock everyone down.
Now, PBM got to play Yamoja 2 out of 2 games here in a set, and it certainly looked good. Really, the only advantage that Obey had here, XP and maybe even gold-wise, was Stewart over Panda Cat. So you have to give the sub here for Obey credit where it's due, but it's a Ymir and Uller lane and a Freya that needs a little bit of time to scale up. And I'm glad that you bring up the Nemesis, because that's sort of where this one snowballed out of control again. I mean, I saw a Thor locked in late and old habits and all that. I'm thinking, yeah, that's Sam, without realizing that maybe his new carry in Nemesis was locked in there. Gore, I remember we were watching the SEC playoffs. What was that, a couple of weeks ago? We saw a Nemesis, and none of us were really bought in, but maybe it's time to buy a ticket to the Nemesis hype train.
I do think these more recent builds are definitely helping her out, but I also think that the compositions that Obey had kind of played more into it. But there's also a lot of those, specifically you could see in the highlights, there was a little bit of Sam getting some last hits. It wasn't, like 6-7 kills that were all him. That Captain Twig Hebo was bringing in a lot of damage to the mix. I think alongside that Thor from the solo lane, being able to set up those kills, whether it's through CC, it's knockups, it's stuns, it's a lot of centralized poke you can get onto a single target. Then you throw Freya in there for the late game, and at that point, you're just questioning, what do we do? And unfortunately, you need maybe 20 more minutes to try and figure out just how to stop it, and Ghost are never going to give you that time.
Yeah, when the only person that's behind is the one who's going to end up scaling out of control if you're able to hold on into the game, you're not in a great spot if you're Obey. We talked a good bit about Sam and the Nemesis pick here in their first game of Phase number 2. For good reason, the Nemesis looked fantastic, and so did Sam. And as such, Finch is standing by with Sam, the Nemesis man, for a post-game interview.
Thank you, Dave. Sam, looking fantastic in-game and out-of-game. How you doing, buddy? I want to ask you, first off, because you played the Nemesis so much here, just how strong do you think Nemesis is right now? You don't have to give too much away, but is she an evergreen pick, or was that just in response to what Obey were doing?
Yeah, I don't know. She's definitely really good, but I think there's a lot of really good picks, and you can kind of go a lot of directions, I'm pretty sure, with what you want to play. Like, it looked like Sino and I valued a lot of different gods, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, Nemesis I think is just a pretty solid pick,
All right, well, talk to me a little bit about how the whole squad is feeling about these changes, because a lot has changed, I would say, between Phase 1 and Phase number 2. Obviously, from this game, it looks like you all haven't missed a beat. How comfortable is the team feeling overall with all these changes you needed to wrap your head around?
I mean, I think we're generally comfortable, but I think us and maybe every team still just trying to figure out how the meta is going to be and what picks are going to be top priority. I think when they just started scrimming, though, we're figuring it out. Scrims were a bit rougher than we showed today, so that's pretty nice for us, I guess. But yeah.
Okay, well, I want to ask you about the picks and bans phase, because I thought that was where we might have seen the biggest disparity between the two teams here. How important do you think that's going to be here in Phase 2, at least at the beginning, right off the midseason update?
Yeah, it'd definitely be really important. I mean, picks and bans will always be, I guess, determined by how you think the meta will be. And yeah, I mean, especially at the beginning when everybody's not completely certain on where they want to be. It's pretty important to try and nail down the top gods, as best as possible.
All right, well, congrats on the big win there, Sam. You guys are obviously looking great right out of the gate. Appreciate you taking some time to talk to me. It's going to be a quick break, though. We'll be right back with the next set here on the SPL. Welcome back to Week 1, Day 1 of the SPL's Phase 2, and what an inaugural day it has been so far here, Gormizer. Ghost, I think, showing us the best of what this current meta has to offer. And going into this next match, Radiance versus E United, I'm expecting we'll see a similar caliber of play.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I feel like what we just got to see, it was just a drop, right? In terms of the ocean of things that have changed, and I think what is available and possible right now. So something that I think is incredible that Ghosts are able to come in, flex that hard with as much as they want, and there's still more that they can go to afterward. It's going to make it even more interesting to see what happens in the second set.
Yeah, the interview with Sam was very illuminating for me. I thought for sure they'd be a bit more confident about their grasp on the meta based on how they had played, but I think he made it clear there is still a lot to sort of learn and figure out, and things are going to be changing. So I'm excited to see what kind of sense our pros make of it. And what better place to look than the second place team from our playoffs here with Radiance in this E United set. And it went all 5 games, very close between these two teams. We're obviously getting, I think, our best look at the best players tackling this meta.
I mean, you're coming in, you've got Adapting, who's got a couple of rings on his finger. He's going to be very happy to be able to tackle this. Yeah. I think Big Man Ting's, I said this in Phase 1, but he was the top average player damer throughout Season 6, and I think he came in and had a very large role here in at least Phase 1. The biggest difference is we saw a lot of Merlin, a lot of Raijin, a lot of things in Phase 1 that realistically in mid, you were playing one of 3 gods most of the time.
Right.
Now I'm wondering if that same comfort is going to exist for him. A lot of the shifts seem to be in the jungle, but I think there's something to be said about your mid laner, specifically trying to utilize that Spear of the Magus in a really useful way for your team is maybe going to play a big role. And of course, we just saw what could happen in solo lane, that anything is kind of thrown out the window if you're fine. Okay, you could just see what sticks to the wall and you'll be fine with it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Radiance play. Remember, they had some trouble in the duo lane early on in Phase 1, so you want to check back in and see if that's all been cleaned up. And speaking of the duo lane, E United has had some shakeups in that exact same type of situation here at Gormizer. They've got Snoopy stepping over to that support position, and then Guy J stepping into the hunter role for them. How do you expect this E United team to look with their new look?
Honestly, it's interesting. I mean, as was mentioned when you were doing the pre-show, you're taking Snoopy, who has been one of the most veteran and I would say accomplished hunters that we've gotten to see, and carries we've gotten to see in Smite, period, and you're putting him on a non-carry role. Now, I think there is something to be said that the Guardians really do affect a lot of the game. Yeah, maybe they're not getting the best slash line, but they really are impacting a lot of it. And you're putting that pressure onto Guy J. And it's not, the case like Stuart had, where it's like, all right, man, you're coming in for this set. It's going to be sick. You can play a little bit in the SBL, but then, wow, he's coming back. This is, a permanent pickup. So you're not only coming in to try and make a good, just shot for yourself, but you're going to have to hold on to it for a little bit. And I think it's going to be difficult because you're up against Cyclone and Aurora, right? You're not getting this passive lane that, you're going to be able to sit back, farm a little bit, and get used to it. Aurora is going to be in your face from second 0.
Yeah, I think the only harder dual lane to deal with, we just saw them back in set 1 in Mike and PandaCat, right? So I 100% agree with you here. It's a pretty tough sort of trial by fire for Guy J here in this very first set for them. But I do think there's a little bit of relief in that I don't think necessarily Hunters have the most pressure on them out of all the classes, probably the least. So maybe in that way it's a little bit easier for him. And the rest of this United squad is still very strong. Obviously, Variety and Hurlwen are really seasoned players here at this point. And sort of as you mentioned, there is a lot more pressure on mid lane with how many different picks there are. I think as long as Guy J can do the basics correctly and let the rest of this veteran team sort of carry him for the most part, he won't be under too much pressure.
Yeah, and I think that's, like you said, the biggest note is just that for a lot of hunters, I mean, honestly, we even saw it a little bit with PandaCat there on Freya, you just kind of wait till your items are online. It doesn't matter if you're 0-6 at the beginning or if you're 1-1 or 6-1. I mean, that will affect your gold flow, but for the most part, you hit 30 minutes in game, you're going to have 6 items. You're going to hit really hard as long as you've itemized well.
Exactly right. So hopefully that can provide a little bit of cover for Guy J as we move into the picks and bans for set number 2. Radiance up against E United. And as I mentioned already, I think there's a lot to keep track of here with Radiance, because I think at the beginning of the phase 1, Radiance looked like the best team. They're on that really hot win streak, but they started floundering a little bit towards the tail end of that phase. That's why their playoff performance was so big for them. I want to see if they can grab that same momentum here, even with all these meta changes.
And I think it's actually maybe especially because of these meta changes, right? I feel like some of them are actually going to end up hurting them where some of their strengths were early on. I feel like Aurora is going to, like, not a lot changed for Guardians, right? I mean, obviously Emoja's still up towards the top, as we just got to see. But I feel like some of these warriors, while they can still be very potent and aggressive, can get punished pretty hard if they get picked up earlier, especially with Atalanta's bow being pretty big right now. Your pin or your protections aren't going to withstand that penetration too long, so you have to be careful with a lot of your positioning and a lot of things like that. So maybe hurting Aurora just a little bit and maybe focusing him down early could be the key for E United to trip up Radiance and cause some trouble for him.
So far, I'm a bit worried. Cthulhu's still available. Ratatosk's still available.
Yeah.
A lot of really good picks could potentially make their way through here. Gore's Radiance have really turned an eye towards these magical ADCs, banning Sol and Olaran alongside that Persephone. They don't want to deal with it. And now E United have such a tough decision. What do they ban here? With Aphrodite taken off, a lot of good stuff is still available here for Radiance to pick.
If it's not Cthulhu, I'm going to be surprised. I think he just brings so much to the team fight. Plus, let's just face it. Look, when Jormungandr came out, for months I got to say how I thought that was the coolest ultimate in Smite. And now I can finally throw that out the window because Cthulhu's got it. But I think it showcases maybe where he is. He is more or less a solo laner. He's not necessarily going to be as prominent over there in the duo lane. I don't think you're going to see as much control. And I feel like Radiance are recognizing that, and they're opting to maybe support the duo lane over grabbing something for solo. But I don't know. That's a big team fight switch up that I think is going to pay in favor here for United.
Yeah, try and hold on to your sanity, chat, because Cthulhu has been locked in. E United are ready to pilot him, and just as you were alluding to, I don't know, something in me is telling me this is for variety and not for Snoopy, right? I think that this might end up over in the solo lane. We'll get a better chance to see as more of these picks come in, but I like this. If you pick the Cthulhu and take the Nemesis, I think you're taking one of the best counters away from your other team, because even in that ultimate, if a Nemesis ult is put on you, you can still be pretty vulnerable.
And I think this is going to cause a lot of trouble for Radiance. You know, part of the reason I think Nemesis was so prominent last set, and part of what I think she's going to be able to continue providing here, is any warriors you pick up, whether it's solo or jungle, they're going to feel that ultimate every time she goes through. And with the items that she has now, she can shred even better. But I think it is going to be that question of how consistently can you get back there, how much can you control them? Because Radiance, you know, they have the Emoji heal coming through. They're looking to maybe survive there. Camazotz, while he's going to hurt from Nemesis ult, still has a lot of survivability. And, of course, with Bat Out of Hell, gets out of there no problem. And now a Kronos, early game, yeah, he's going to maybe suffer. Late game, he's going to rewind and then smack you 2 times, 3 times maybe, and you're going to be gone.
It's interesting. I don't think there's that big of a disparity between the magical ADCs right now. I do think Olaran and Freya edge everyone out because their ultimates are so impactful in team fights.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to match it. But Kronos, you're certainly not feeling bad about yourself if that's the magical ADC you fall down to, Gore Miser. So I think this could look strong as Giannis gets locked in for United. I mean, that is a Whirlwind special.
I think, yeah, it's a Whirlwind special. It's an E United special. I think alongside the Nemesis of the Cthulhu, it's that mix of what works for us and what works in this meta. Let's tie them together in a nice little bow, and hopefully it works out in the game. But I think what you were saying is specifically about the magical ADCs, right? You get Freya and Olaran, as you had mentioned, good in team fights. Kronos, he's still good in a team fight, but honestly, between him and Sol, the insane pressure you can put on objectives there is really where I think they're going to be prominent. So E United have a lot of work cut out for them, whether it's a Fury, whether it's a Fire Giant, but realistically, I'm thinking towers, I'm thinking Phoenixes. Those defenses are not going to be easy, but I like the route they're going. They ban out that Neath, which, honestly, I could hear maybe Katie getting excited. Finally, Neath is someone that's worthy of being banned, but it really is because when you have this magical ADC, you need to find the offset somewhere, and it is in this area where you want these, you know, your Ulers, your Neaths, your ability-based hunters kind of going back into the mid lane.
And I think ability-based hunters are pretty strong right now as well, so good heads-up ban from United to take that Neath out. They end up taking the Hachiman. This feels a little bit old school, but all 4 magical ADCs are gone at this point, so you got to go somewhere else. It looks like E United want that extra safety from the Hachiman plus that mounted archery. And look at this from Radiance. They're picking up the On Her, so Gore, now the question becomes, where are they putting this On Her? I mean, I feel like that's got to be going mid.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Kronos needs the solo farm. I think, you put him on the island, which now is the long lane. Yamoja's going to hang out for a little bit, and again, maybe he's going to have some trouble, especially against a Hachiman early on. But he's not looking for clear. He's not looking to try and get a 5-minute tower. He's really looking for that, 4-item mark, right? Once he gets the Ring of Hecate online, if he wants to, he can go for a hastened ring, or he can look into Telkine's ring. Any of the rings, really, are going to fit well on his fingers, and he'll make them look good. And I think that's going to be the kind of long play for Radiance. Let on her Hunbats kind of carry them into the mid-late game where Kronos Camazotz can take over.
Is this going to be tier solo then and Cthulhu support at this point? I mean, I think tier support's certainly a thing. I mean, we don't quite have awesome Jake here with us, but I mean, we have seen it, right? So it certainly could be either one.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic to have. Tier, actually, maybe going over to that dual lane even better, because what are they going to do? I mean, Yamoja could potentially get them away from it, but there's only so much she can do if you expend that Omi early on. Kronos doesn't necessarily have an easy out there. You could pretty bully him, or at least as hard as you want to, if you can lock him down. I think the same thing could be said for Cthulhu, but that channeling route that he has on his 2, it's a little more difficult to get it to connect. It's huge, it's massive, but once you see it, you just walk out of there and you don't have to worry about too much. So I think he has some potency over there with the Hachiman. I do think you could toss it up either way, but I kind of like the idea of Tier going over there and just giving Kronos hell.
But this is what the mid-season update can do for us. We get to see the magical ADCs, the Cthulhu's, all that fun stuff happening as we move into game number 1 between Radiance and United.
Thank you very much, Finch and Gormizer. It's Dolson and Aggro on the call, and Doug on the camera here. And Aggro, it is a great day to be a SMITE fan and an absolutely free day to be a Chair 1 here in the SPL, because there's just so much to go over. And right now it's Snoopy being chased down by Radiance. Full 5 stack from Radiance have made their way over to the purple buff, and 15 seconds to go on the countdown. Radiance already have first blood.
Yeah, that's the worst possible option there for Snoopy. I think once Aurora gets the stun, the first stun was nicely juked by Snoopy. And look, he's in a bad spot there because Cthulhu's hitbox is massive, so it's really easy for Radiance to land those kill shots. As soon as Aurora gets off the stun bubble, I think Snoopy has to use the dash there. Instead, he tries to wait, gets a little bit greedy, tries to get out of combat, will never be able to do so because the Emoja slows, and then he gets his dash caught and killed for it. And obviously not a great start to Snoopy's support career in the SPL.
Well, hey, this is a perfect segue to really sink our teeth into this long lane a little bit, I think. Snoopy, obviously, with the timer still counting down, his death timer quite short, so was able to make it back in time for the purple buff nonetheless. But a new age look for this United long lane here. Guy J now playing over in the Hunter role, and Snoopy's debut in the support role obviously hasn't started off all that smoothly just yet. Hard to blame them, though, when you've got Aurora and Cyclone Spin bearing down on you. What do you think this United long lane starts to look like, though? It's obviously going to be different from maybe some of the vibes we saw in Phase 1.
Very much so. I think that Guy J and his aggressiveness, I think, is going to ramp as he gets more comfortable in the SPL. I can't imagine that he's going to really be the most aggressive ADC in the world, especially if Snoopy continues to get caught out like this. But just watching Guy J's stream, looking at his Twitter, the guy's a confident dude. And that's kind of what I think is the right mindset for ADC players, because you have a lot of pressure on you as an ADC that once the game gets late, the ball's in your court. So you've got to feel like you're going to be making every single play. And I think that Guy J has the right sort of mentality. I'm excited to see what he brings. I think that he's been a very impressive ADC at the SML level. So seeing if he can now extend that into the SPL is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to happen right away, but I think that we'll see him get more and more comfortable as the weeks go on. Same can be said for Snoopy in support. I think that it's going to take him some time to ramp, but I'd expect Snoopy to be picking a lot more of the mechanically demanding supports, because you go from ADC, which is the most demanding mechanical role in the game, to support, which is usually thought of as the least. I think that's where Snoopy can try and separate himself from the pack.
Now, Aggro, I have to harsh on the community a little bit here. And all of the in-game voting, E-United were heavily in favor, heavily voted on by viewers and everyone over in the esports and live stream tab. But I suppose the poll went up after First Blood for Radiance was in 15 seconds left on the countdown. So everyone has jumped off the E-United ship and joined over for Radiance. 80-something% there on the in-client poll. But I think as tough as a start as Snoopy has had, Cthulhu, I think, needs to be talked about. They were able to brush on him a little bit in picks and bans. Wondered maybe if it would be solo lane over here in the long lane, but it is support Cthulhu, and normally you'd think that he would have good control over the lane, the big circle for some good damage, even a root here and there. But Snoopy just hasn't been able to get comfortable enough to really buy Guy J or the lane any breathing room just yet.
Cthulhu is going to be interesting to watch, man. I think that it's really possible that he is even better than the community says at a competitive level because of how strong damage mitigation is. Damage mitigation is one of the best stats in all of Smite because there's no counterplay to it. You're just taking less damage and they can't build anything to stop it. And that's what makes Cthulhu really strong, is that his passive gives him damage mitigation, and then when he ults, he gets even more damage mitigation. And so how often can you stack up that passive? It's a lot harder in the duo lane than it is in solo lane, where you might be able to take some more extended engagements, proc your passive a little bit more often because you're using that third hit of your auto chain more consistently. It's a hard passive to proc, but even getting an extra couple percentage points on it is really critical. And I'm interested to see how a coordinated team is able to play around Cthulhu more so than in a casual.
Scream is here, and Big Man Tings is no longer. Blinked and you missed it. In the middle lane on her is suddenly off the map. A great executed gank there by E-United. That's Cyclone Spin, who has to pop the ultimate over in the long lane to keep himself safe and alive. So a little bit of breathing room for E-United now. Guy J still on the chase. Cyclone Spin able to stay alive. Snoopy has found a little bit of confidence as well, and he's going to force a roar back from this red buff side. We got to rewind the clocks just a few moments, Aggro, and look at the gank that works out in the mid lane there for E-United.
Big man jumping into lane, I imagine, just based on the way that E-United played it, and that's just good accuracy by Heroin and no hesitation by Scream, which is exactly what you want.
Uh-oh, Adapting is over in the long lane, and that's a Fear No Evil that'll lock down Snoopy. Both of Radiance's kills 5 minutes into the game on the feet of Snoopy so far, so a rough time to be a Cthulhu here in this game. Variety looks for the blue buff invade, unable to complete it as Benji locks that one down. We haven't really been able to talk about Cyclone Spin on this Chronos just yet. We figured these magical ADCs would be prominent. We've seen a variety, I suppose, of priority in what we've seen. Soul getting banned out this game. Obviously, Freya's been picked and banned. Oleron has seen some play. Now Chronos is where Cyclone Spin elects to go. Ring of Hecate, no surprise there. Is it just kind of free real estate, any of these magical ADCs with this Ring of Hecate?
I think they're all playable, for sure. I think that all of them are strong at different points in the game. I think Chronos brings the most hyper carry potential in one-on-one and two-on-one scenarios come late game, and so it doesn't surprise me that that's where Cyclone wants to go. That's a little bit more his playstyle. I think Oleron is what you go a little bit later in the draft more often than not, because it's really hard to be effective on that pick if the enemy team has a lot of CC immune ultimates that give you problems in your own ultimate. I think the Chronos early does signify that you want to go later than something like Soul. I think Soul is the most early pressure of any of those magical ADCs, but she might be the least impactful overall. She's kind of the jack of all trades, master of none among the magical ADCs in my mind. Chronos is if we think we're going 45 plus, we love to have this pick on our side. And you look at the way that Radiance played in the Phase 1 playoffs, where, don't forget, they got second place in a close finals up against Ghost. There's a team that people, I think, aren't giving enough respect right now. I think that they're coming into this week looking strong.
Watch out, Adapting. Scream has rotated through the mid lane. Hurrywind from the back line will snipe down Adapting. Both of the Radiance kills on the Hunbats, and now one of two kills for United falls to Adapting as well. So, all things considered, Aggro, and granted, First Blood isn't the end-all be-all in these Smite games. Things looking a bit rough early on for E-United, but they've evened this game right back up.
They've been really aggressive around mid. It's really been Hurrowwind and Scream. No one else has been needed to get that involved. Snoopy there with his positioning took Adapting's options away, but the ultimate he brought didn't really do a whole lot for him.
A couple members of Radiance now maybe caught out. That's the rewind from Cyclone Spin, but he's on the wrong side of the map. He's got plenty of damage. Maybe he turns around to kill
onto Hurrywin, stays alive. Gaijay, one more auto. It's a 1-for-1 trade, but well played to Cyclone Spin to turn around the damage.
And here comes Adapting, has that Blink ultimate available, looking for Gaijay, but can't quite find him. Great spacing from the E United duo lane is going to make sure Adapting comes up empty-handed. But you feel like E United could have played that a little bit more cleanly right there. I mean, the fact that Hurrywin dies on that rewind, I think Radiance did the right thing. They split up. Aurora and Cyclone kind of go on two opposite ways. I don't like Snoopy using that dash when he did. You kind of have to save that to disrupt the Chronos off the rewind, in my mind. And then Gaijay kind of messes up the ultimate a little bit, ditches Hurrywin into a one-on-one up against Cyclone, and Cyclone didn't have boots at the time, but he did have Akate, and that's all you need, frankly, as a magical ADC, because it's so impactful, and that kind of left Hurrywin up a creek without a paddle, so a little bit awkward. Overall, you still get the kill, but E United just playing that one a little bit with... They were a little bit low on respect there, I think, for Cyclone's damage.
Yeah, Ring of Hecate, all you need as a magical ADC, or a mage in the solo lane, I guess. We saw Hades build the Hecate in set number 1. No mages to be found in the solo lane here in this game. Going to be Camazotz and Tyr, a somewhat traditional matchup, I suppose. But Soul Eater is now going to rear its head once again on day 1 of Phase 2 here in the SPL. And Camazotz certainly not short on sustain, but that Soul Eater out of the solo lane, with a lot of the shield changes we've seen, has become a favorite to keep some of that health rolling. Might have to return to that as Cyclone's been forced to use the ultimate. Snoopy is here as well. Good bead usage, but I'm not sure it's enough to get Cyclone Spin out of danger, and Gaijay will put him down once more.
Love that play from Scream. You can use that Divine Retribution ultimate from Nemesis, steal their stats, and even when Cyclone rewinds, Scream still has the stats, so it's not as bad as it would be for many junglers who would ult and then get their ultimate countered by rewind. Love that aggressiveness, and Scream has really turned it up so far this game, and I've loved the way he's played so far. Hasn't gotten rewarded by a kill quite yet, but still impactful.
It's the Nemesis difference, man. Hurrywin is rotated to the solo lane, and Variety will pick up the kill on the gank. BMT, Aurora, both here on the counter gank as well. Hurrywin is going to portal his way out. That's a River's Rebuke to lock down Variety, and Aurora will finish off the kill. A lot of the damage done there by the on her ultimate, but it's a successful counter gank nonetheless. 1-for-1 trade across the board.
Still, you trade out solo laners. Benji on this Camazotz, you feel like he's in a spot where maybe he would have been getting a little bit more lane priority normally, so I think you're kind of okay with how that trade went. I guess it is slightly better for Radiance because they get their mid laner involved as well as the support, but Aurora getting the kill makes it a little bit less detrimental for E United. I feel like the way that E United has played so far has been very, very mid and jungle centric, and that's going to put a lot of pressure onto Scream come late game because he's not a character that can really kill multiple people easily. Nemesis is we're killing this guy for sure, and everyone else we're not really that sure on, and then you've got Giannis, who's the same sort of way. It's not easy to spread your damage out through a team fight. It's usually pretty single target. And I think that United's going to have to really be on top of their communication on how they're going to win these team fights in their target selection, because otherwise, Radiance has a very good snowball comp. I mean, Benji is going to have a ton of sustain, and there's not going to be a lot of anti-heal that can take him down easily. Giannis can't really provide it. Looks like Scream might be building brawlers, but again, that's kind of single target. I think that Benji might be able to just run amok in these team fights. And if it's not Benji, then it's Cyclone, or it's Big Man, or it's Adapting. All of these guys are playing characters that really have carry potential.
Well, look at the pressure from E United here. It's that pressure that has forced Radiance back, and it's a Pyromancer now opened up for E United. Nobody from Radiance there to try to counter it out. Instead, it's a secured red buff in the eye of Radiance back here on their own side of the map. Now, with so many jungle changes, you know, seeing Golden Blade first overall here for Scream, certainly not surprising. Serrated Edge, though, one of our early looks at this item here in the current jungle meta. I think it'll be interesting to look at. Obviously, you have to fire the ability, and if all of your non-ultimates are on cooldown, you gain those bonus stats. But that means that Scream has double dashed into one of these fights, right? I mean, if that ability is off of cooldown, interesting item, I suppose, on this Nemesis for Scream in the jungle.
Agreed. I think that The passive seems a bit narrow on Nemesis, because I agree that you don't often want to be double dashing aggressively. But here's the way I look at it. With Golden Blade there, you kind of don't want to buy boots, because so much of what makes boots strong is that it's really stat efficient for its gold, even if the stats aren't really widespread. You know, it's just power and movement speed. And when you don't need the movement speed, well, in the case of Ninja Tabai as well, you get the attack speed, a little bit of mana, blah, blah, blah. It's really just power and movement speed. In the case of Golden Blade, when you already have 10%, you don't really want to get that extra movement speed from boots, because the diminishing returns on movement speed makes it not super valuable. So in my mind, even though Serrated Edge, the passive probably isn't that great on Nem here, I'm kind of thinking, would I rather have this stat distribution than Boots stat distribution? And I absolutely would. You get more, you get physical penetration, you get power, you get that attack speed, and you still get the movement speed that you would have been getting anyways without a whole lot of drop-off. So in the moments where I do have the passive up, it's going to be way better than Boots could ever be. So for that reason alone, I think that the Serrated Edge makes sense here, even if the passive doesn't seem to be that great on them.
Watch out, Snoopy is rotated over to the mid lane. BMT has to jump away. A Fear No Evil on the back line will keep Scream right where he is, so well played by adapting there. Snoopy has gone big and is somewhat low. Adapting, hanging close by. Aurora here as well. Variety has now blinked forward, looking for a pick, maybe over onto adapting. Not to be. Small skirmish there in the jungle. A defensive usage of the Radiance jungler ultimate there. The Fear No Evil from adapting. Both teams coming out fully even.
I think that was a great play here for E-United, because look at the relic situation all of a sudden for Radiance. No beads for adapting, no relics at all for Big Man, and no shell for Aurora. You look across the way, Variety TP'd and used Blink. Who cares? He can be effective without him. Blink, sure, but even that is on a lower cooldown than basically everything else on the other side. So I think that was a great fight for E-United, but now they've got to capitalize. Let's go to Gold Fury. Let's actually use this window that we've earned for ourselves, and it's going to take these ultimates coming back up for United before they're willing to do that, I imagine, which makes sense to me. You don't really gain that much without your ultimates, but once they have them, I think it should be an automatic Gold Fury pull.
Oh, here comes Variety. Benji forced into the bat out of hell. It is a Gold Fury pull instead for Radiance, sensing impending pressure over in the solo lane. Radiance feel comfortable now over in this Fury Pit. Big damage from Hurrywind into the backline onto adapting. Snoopy has dashed forward, and Aurora now is the eye of Variety's eye. The ultimate from Nemesis will drop in on through, and Variety will finish off the kill over onto Aurora. United pick up one, and maybe that's the true opening for this Gold Fury to be pulled out.
I feel like that was a bit ambitious there from Radiance. I understand the idea. You know that you're so disadvantaged later. Okay, oh, that was close.
It was.
Radiance knows that Gold Fury is basically gone as soon as the United gets ultimates up, because they are so behind on resources. So they think maybe we can catch United on some bad backs. They're not going to look to play aggressively until their ultimates are back up. But with Hurrywind having that much CDR, he's already 40% plus Chronos passive, his ultimate comes back up earlier than I think Radiance was ready for. And it wasn't even the damage, it didn't hit anybody, but it was getting Snoopy directly into the backline, even without Snoopy having his ultimate, that just made enough of a threat that Radiance didn't feel like they could stand tall and do that Gold Fury effectively. It looks a little bit odd. I understand the thought process there from Radiance, but E-United makes a good response in order to get back into it.
And how about this from Snoopy? I mean, a really rough start. Luckily didn't put him all that much behind. Net worth-wise, a couple hundred gold, obviously bottom of the charts, but only 200 gold, not 2,000, behind Aurora, his counterpart over there for Radiance. We wondered what these Cthulhus would look to build. Figured it might be a little bit hybrid. And you go Thebes first overall. Very strong first item there in the support role. But a Divine Ruin is the second item Snoopy's going to look to pick up.
I actually kind of like it, because you get so much free mitigation on Cthulhu that you won't feel as squishy. He'll still feel squishy, but not as squishy as most other characters in the game. And then you really need the Divine, and like I said, Hurrywind can't build it. You need it against the Yamoja and the Kamazots. I think it's actually a pretty smart pickup here for Snoopy. I like it quite a bit.
Ooh, good shot there from Hurrywind. Variety won't be able to follow up on the damage. Benji has just been getting looked at by E-United. A lot of presence from E United over here on the solo lane side of the map. That's going to be a Pyromancer taken down relatively for free. Both solo laners opting for the sledge here, aggro. We've all been kind of conversing and haven't really been able to put a finger on exactly what direction we think some of these solo laners will take their builds. But I think it's an item that works quite well with what Variety and Benji are both going to be looking to do in a lot of these fights, getting in, getting involved, and stacking up some of those protections.
This is exactly what I'd expect to see Sledge in most solo laners builds. Third item, you get it online as that perfect item for right when you want to start rotating. That's the kind of measurement usually for solo laners is my third item is when I want to start getting out of lane and start impacting the map. Sledge is perfect for that. It gives you power, it gives you good tankiness as well, and it's pretty cheap, which is kind of the necessity.
Well, hey, Variety's got all 3 stacks of the passive there with the 3-man attempted dive over in the solo lane. Snoopy has rotated his way over as well. Where can you find the pressure now if you're E United? A couple members pushing down the mid lane. That's Scream and Hurrywin maybe looking to find some damage there. Looks like Tier 1 tower may be forfeit here by E United. It's going to be BMT knocking down the first tower of the game.
Don't know about that blink engagement there by Snoopy, though. He holds the ultimate, but the blink onk, I mean, I know the through space and time was coming through, but I can't imagine that United was going to get there fast enough to really follow up off of that onk anyways. Just not perfect timing on that. And onk is usually a relic that wins or loses you fights very, very quickly. And that's something that E United and everyone should really be looking for is how supports use their relics. That is one of the higher skill cap parts of the role that I think really goes under the radar. And that's something I'm going to be watching for the rest of the match.
And as you know, as much as we've kind of looked at really builds across the board, and it's a lot of fun in some of these games getting kind of our first look at what these different roles want to build and so on and so forth. Cyclone Spin moved into the Hecate and then obviously got the lifesteal boots. Typhon's Fang into the changed up spear, the Magus there. So bit of a hybrid build, I suppose, on his own end. As far as, instead of, going kind of that full ring stack that some of the other magical ADCs will opt for.
A lot less attack speed for the Chronos,
right.
But Accelerate does help with that. Feel like we'll probably see Demonic Grip next, but it makes total sense to me. I mean, you're going to toss out that stop time. It's going to proc instantly on the first part of that damage. It's going to make the second tick do even more damage. It's going to make your time stop deal or your one deal even more damage. It's going to make your auto attack swing even harder. This build looks phenomenal for Cyclone Spin, and it's going to make him do plenty of damage to anyone he needs to deal damage to. I do think he's lacking a bit of attack speed, but I think that'll be coming in the next few items.
You have to be worried if you're United. You built yourself up a 2,000 or so gold lead, but certainly still scaling from Radiance that can build themselves up back into this game. Only one Fury attempted so far, and just now Primal Fury springing right back out. You look at where both of these two teams stand and kind of the way Radiance are positioning themselves here. Certainly not discrepant enough, I don't think, in the gold category to move away from this Primal Fury should a fight spring out.
This should be a pretty close fight because now you look at the power spikes completed for Radiance. They're all sitting on recently completed items for the most part, so that means that they're basically even with their counterparts. Snoopy, I feel like, hasn't backed in a long time. He's been on that Divine Ruin for quite some time, and now at this point, I don't know that he's going to get an opportunity to back before the next big team fight. That can be problematic when you're sitting with a lot of gold in hand and it doesn't really do a whole lot for you in the bank. You got to be able to go back and spend it.
Aurora is going to try to lock down Snoopy here. Oracles are for E United here, so no sneak away from Radiance, but Cyclone Spin just going to poke and prod a little bit, sensing out maybe the answer from E United should Radiance have fully started it back up. The big difference maker here, aggro, might just be that Benji is over in that solo lane, doesn't have the Tier 1 teleport completed, but instead of moving over, fully pushing out that wave, he's instead going to rotate his way back on in. Both teams thinking long and hard about how they want this initiation to come for them.
It's a little bit hard, I think, for United to find easy initiations because they really need a blink in from Variety or Scream to get it started. I don't think that the Blink Cthulhu ult is very good because everyone will just run away. It's especially easy to run away with the Emoja, where she can just put down a couple Riptides, and you can get out of range of that Cthulhu ultimate pretty quickly with help from Emoja.
Well, here we go. Maybe. Aurora and Benji both poking at the Primal Fury. E United quick on the response there. Variety is going to keep his bubble alive. Aurora looking to pop that one. United have pulled back the Fury here. Benji, Aurora, both in range. It's a Fire Giant started up by Cyclone Spin, and Cyclone Spin alone. Yeah, it's the Primal Fury taken down here, but look at the sustain from Cyclone. It's going to be the solo FG for the Kronos ADC. You got to be kidding me. It's free for Radiant. They've only given up a Primal Fury.
Yeah, that's easy for him. I mean, he's still got hundreds of HP to work with. That build makes it work. I mean, Typhon's lifesteal boots and Hecate, that's so much lifesteal. I imagine Cyclone was using the 4th quadrant of Accelerate to up the basic attack damage, but if he needs more HP, you can go into the 1st quadrant and get some HP back pretty quickly. It's a great play by Radiance, and I think that is exactly what you want to see from teams right after a big patch. It's 2 weeks from now, that's not going to catch anyone off guard. United's going to be constantly nervous. Unless we see Kronos, we can't pull Primal because he could be soloing FG if we don't have wards on it. That is going to be in people's minds. But until you have it happen to you, it's hard to constantly think about it in that way. And they probably think that Cyclone reset, they don't have him on a ward, maybe he's just back by purple and doesn't feel like he has a way into this fight. We can just pull Primal Fury and secure it. Radiants play that perfectly. They show up in force, they don't completely give it up to set off the alarm bells for United, but they let Cyclone go and do what clearly he has tested is, hey, I've got a lot of lifesteal. Can I just solo this? And he can, it turns out.
Well, the mid lane tower is absolutely melted by Radiance. And look at the dive. Adapting is going to put down the Fear No Evil. Scream is here trying to turn something around. That's the Frenzy, popped. But it's 5 members strong for Radiance, all with the FG buff. The tier 2 tower in the mid lane is the next to crumble. Variety just hanging off to the right. But aggro looks like Radiance are just going to be able to walk this one in.
They're in a really good spot. They've got so much tower damage as well between the Kronos and the On-Her. Look at that Phoenix go, man. 330 in auto for the Kronos, and we are only 24 minutes in. He gets stronger with every minute that goes by. Literally. It's the passive. It's not getting any easier for these Phoenixes to stay up. That's without enhanced FG too. Goodness, man. Magical ADCs. Didn't you miss them?
I sure did. I don't know how you feel. I mean, I know you're a big, mage out of the mid lane guy, but aggro looks like you might have to be picking up someone who can sling some autos a little bit more consistently and put that one in your god pool. It's the mid lane Phoenix missing, and left lane Phoenix is suddenly going to be looked at here by Radiance. Benji still in the mid lane, ushering those minions into the E United base. 2 ultimates still on cooldown for E United, 3 for Radiance, so not a completely reinforced fight here from either team. It's Snoopy moves his way forward. Cyclone Spin taking too much damage. That's the power of what this Cthulhu can bring, and Snoopy will finish him off. It's a 2 for none so far for United. Exactly the base defense that you need. And Benji will be able to maybe escape with his life, but what a turnaround from United on the edge of defeat.
I mean, that's exactly what Cthulhu is supposed to be able to do. That was my first thought whenever I saw the ultimate is, how on earth do you siege against that? It's just the whole lane is taken up by Snoopy, and a good play by Heroind as well. He hits Cyclone down to a very, very low HP. That's exactly what you need your Giannis to do. It's why Giannis is so inconsistent at a top level. It's pretty binary. If you go for the all-in on the enemy backliner and hit it, you're gonna win the fight. If you don't, you'll likely lose the fight. And there, United hit their shots, and they won the fight because of it.
And they won the fight, but my brain just, and for good reason, keeps going back to the solo FG from Cyclone Spin and how that really busted the game kind of wide open. It really felt like E United were in control. There was still a 2K gold lead, at least on the board, maybe not as far as complete utility goes for E United. So that long peak downward you see there before Radiance were able to crack open that base. Can't be understated how important that was here for Radiance. And really, where all of these gods stand, I don't know if United are going to feel all that comfortable moving out to try to contest the next FG that'll be back in 45 or so seconds.
I mean, Radiance's composition isn't this insane team fight comp like they were drafting a whole lot at playoffs. It's good, but it's really heavily relying on Yamoja and Kronos to carry the vast majority of the team fights. I mean, Hunbat's a good team fighter, sure, but it's not like he is head and shoulders above everybody else. I mean, adapting has really been the last hit king so far in this game. I believe last time we checked, he was lowest in the game in player damage. So it's not like he's been really causing a whole lot of problems. E United, on the other hand, I mean, their composition is the exact same no matter what time it is. Can Hurlwind snipe one of the backliners? If so, we're probably going to win. If not, it's going to be a lot harder. And we go back to that lack of AoE for them again.
Well, the confidence does show here for United. They're going to take down the Primal Fury once more. Fire Giant is spawned, but Cyclone Spin not on the side to solo it here just yet. So a small token taken by E United. It might build up some confidence for them moving forward here. Aggro, and maybe a small moment to get quick thoughts. It's both the Fail Not and the A-Bow built out for BMT here out of the mid lane. We wondered where, and Gaijay for that matter, we wondered where those items would slot in.
I'm not as surprised at all to see the Atalantas. If you're going crit like Gaijay is, I think that the Fail Not Wind Demon is definitely the way to go alongside the Rage. That build makes a ton of sense to me. Little surprised to see Fail Not on Big Man, but it's also just a pretty solid stat item. I like it.
We'll have to see if it's able to do enough damage to Snoopy, who has gone large here in the FG pit. Benji is in the back line, but Gaijay able to get himself out alive. Cyclone Spin, he's found the opening kill. Snoopy just can't walk away from these fights, and now Benji has free reign to swing away onto Variety. It's an FG pulled. Cyclone Spin was able to do it alone a few moments ago. It's just going to be that much quicker now that Radiants are fully reinforced. Benji playing Separator. Radiants take down the Fire Giant. Aurora moving forward, looking for the lockdown, unable to find it onto Variety. But the chase still is on beneath this Tier 2 tower. United on the back foot.
Cyclone awfully quick, gonna try and see if he can catch someone on the rotation. Gaijay actually goes in, looking for Cyclone. Whoa. Everything onto the Kronos, and he's still up for now.
If they're not able to finish him off, Hurlwind even snipes him out, and look at Cyclone right back to half HP. United have found exactly what they were looking for, but they're unable to capitalize on it. 5 seconds left on the respawn here for Snoopy. Middle lane Phoenix respawned, but not for long. Radiance pushing into the E United base, but instead they'll turn their eyes towards this right lane. Big minion wave pushing into the short lane.
I don't think this is going to be an opportunity to get the right side Phoenix. No ultimates up and available. And that was just an awkward timing for E United to fight around that Fire Giant, because they had just, after doing the Primal Fury, they used through space and time, which was now on a 30%, only 30% CDR for Hurlwind. He'd sold the Mage's Blessing to get E-Staff 2, so he didn't have full CDR anymore, so it took a little bit longer for that to come up. And Snoopy had again used Curse Ankh in a not very impactful position. So Radiants are super favored on that fight. Snoopy ults, and they just kind of group up on him. And again, they can't really get punished by AoE based on United's composition, especially with through space and time on cooldown. Scream found his way into the backline pretty effectively. Tings was under some siege, but without Hurlwind's ultimate to supplement, it's going to be pretty difficult for that dive to work effectively. And Radiants really do a good job of just not being scared of hitting the Cthulhu. Snoopy not super tanky, especially against magical damage, who's really going to be the one who gives him the most trouble. And so he falls pretty quickly to Cyclone Spin.
And Cyclone Spin, you bring up not all that afraid of AoE, and Hide of the Nemean Lion would sort of confirm that. You build up those blocks stack, and if Gaijay or Scream is trying to swing away at you, you've extended your life just a little bit longer. And a team fight like we saw in the last few moments is exactly what he needs. He was able to feel himself right back up.
It used to be that mid laners and ADCs would sell their boots for Mantle if they felt like they need defense. Against a lot of compositions, Nemean just removes characters. I mean, Scream can never kill you when his first 2 autos get block stacked. And how about when his next 2 after that get block stacked because of the shell that Aurora has? This item just removes Dodgy, I think, from really high competitive experience. I think she gets basically eliminated by this item. I think it really hurts Nemesis as well. This takes Cyclone out of the conversation for getting one-shot by a Nem Blink ult auto. And that's a huge part of what makes Nem viable at this point in the game. So it's not a good start for E United now. It's I've said it a bunch, but It's really dependent on what Heroine's ult does in this next team fight.
A little bit on the back end of it. Frenzy popped. Radiance, they want to go now. Aegis out is Hurriwin's ultimate, so now United doesn't have that tool to turn around the team fight. That's a fear no evil from adapting to peel out his backline. Variety, he's found himself alone with 4 members of Radiance looking at him. Cyclone Spin finishes off the United solo laner, Benji. So difficult to deal with, swinging away on Gaijay. It's 5 strong from Radiance, barreling down the left-hand lane towards the United Titan. Scream has to dash his way away here, but there's just too much damage. United, they've fallen behind in the kill department. BMT with the double kill will put him down, and Radiance in 33 minutes will take game number 1.
Look, all things considered, with how rough the early game was for Snoopy, him falling behind by quite a bit, I think the draft for United was not particularly cohesive, and I think that they really came ill-prepared to deal with the amount of sustain that Radiance drafted very early in that draft. All that being said, United still looked better than they did the majority of last phase. And I think that is important to point out. That game was really in their favor up until Cyclone made that crazy play soloing the Fire Giant. Radiance taking you to late game is going to favor Radiance. They beat every team in the playoffs except for one by doing that exact same strategy. I think United just has to change their drafts and they'll have a better shot in game 2.
And Radiance nearly took the playoffs as well over a team as strong as Ghost.
Yeah.
Radiance certainly here to play E-United, though, not far off. It took until that final team fight there for United to fall behind in the kill department, so this one's close. This one goes 33 minutes, but it's Radiance out on top. I'm hoping the desk can make sense of what the heck just happened.
We'll try to, Dave. Thank you very much. It looks like Cyclone Spin has mastered the magical ADCs, but you can master all the elements with this cool new Avatar Battle Pass that we have going on. I imagine there's basically no one who doesn't know about this yet, but let me make sure I inform you. We got Aang, Katara, and Zuko all a part of the game now. You get Zuko right away when you unlock the Battle Pass. That's your skin for Susanoo, and then you can progress through to get skins for Korra and Aang as well. That'll be for Scotty and for Merlin, respectively. So make sure you hop into the Battle Pass, have some fun, and bring Avatar to SMITE. And now, Gore, we have the difficult task of somehow making sense of this game, because I think that if you want to say United played better for the whole game, I think you might actually be right. It just turns out that that Kronos can solo Fire Giant 20-something minutes into the game, and it's pretty hard to beat that.
Yeah, it was an interesting math equation. Ring of Hecate plus Typhon's Fang plus Lifesteal Boots equals free Fire Giant. Now, I didn't know, it's kind of like the up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right. It's the Konami code, but for Kronos, I guess, when it comes down to it. It is the only thing, and maybe honestly, in my eyes, the only god who could utilize a kit and these items well enough to do that on his own. But working along with his passive, and specifically his 2, stopping the clock in the right area, whether it's for lifesteal, whether it's for refunding, keeping some of your mana to get more abilities off, or straight up just the auto attack damage. I think Kronos fit into this incredibly well. And that was like the start of it, right? It was a very slow start because Kronos isn't this early game god. He doesn't necessarily do anything, at least not spectacularly, in the first 10, 15 minutes. But as you get him going, all of a sudden he has a little bit of team fight play, apparently a lot of PvE that he can bring into the game. And then what they ended up doing, I think, was just that even though E-United kept pacing the game and, like you said, maybe even played better, you lost map pressure. Radiance, with that Fire Giant, really were able to turn the map around into their favor, really able to make it so that any gold lead, anything that you had cultivated as E-United, just wasn't going to be enough, and they put themselves into an easy win state for the game.
They did. I think by most metrics, by gold, by kill count, up until that final Phoenix Siege, E-United were ahead, right? I mean, they were feeling really good about their fight on the Gold Fury. You heard Aggro say it in the moment. They really played that Gold Fury fight about as well as you possibly can. It's just that no one in their minds yet had considered that Cyclone Spin might be off somewhere doing the most objective. Right, exactly, on the map all by himself. Who could do it, who would, and they just weren't prepared for it at that moment. So I think that Aggro was so right to point out that E-United should feel at least a little bit bolstered. Obviously, this Giannis pick works for Heroine. He was hitting all his snipes. Things were clicking. It just was not enough to get the win this time.
Man, and if you thought they were going to be a lot of ward spot by E-United this game, I expect Fire Giant from 15 minutes onward to have a ward coverage, or at least around it, for everything in Game 2. I think there's going to be something there constantly. The only real issue I think that stood out to me specifically on E United, and honestly it's not an issue, it's really just a mechanical thing. If you are solid at being able to auto cancel with Nemesis, that serrated edge is going to be positive. Otherwise you have to use your shield to get a little aggressive, which is maybe just a curious play there from Scream. It still ended up looking pretty good for him, but 00 and 6 not really picking up the kills himself. You could definitely feel that he wasn't able to stay in the fights the same way we saw out of Sam in the first set.
Yeah, very, very impressive from him. And I think you're right to sort of point out some of the interactions there with Nemesis and Serrated Edge and how it might not be as much of a catch-all item as I think as some of our people think, but Scream able to get some good use out of it there. I wonder, though, if some of this is picks and ban score, Miser, because a lot of the magical ADCs were banned. Soul, Olred, and Freya all taken away, but Chronos still made his way through. I think you might have to ban all of them, or, as Miffle was telling me in the break, maybe ban less of them so at least you can get one too.
You're playing two different games here, right? You're playing Smite once you actually get into the game and trying to figure out what's going on. But picks and bans has become a different beast to tackle because of that, right? I mean, let's say you do ban all 4 magical ADCs. Well, now Persephone, Aphrodite, you've got Cthulhu, Ratatoskr. All of these people you would normally ban out are all of a sudden still available. And while we haven't necessarily gotten to see Ratatoskr come towards the top, we've not necessarily seen maybe the cleanest game of Cthulhu just there, I think it's still something that warrants the fact that, you have to wonder where your bans are going. And none of that's even looking at the Yamoja or any of those other top bans that we've had in the first half of this year.
I'm excited to see how these picks and bans look different for game number 2 here, Gore. Persephone banned away by Radiance, Freya banned away by E United. I also wonder, are we going to see that Cthulhu hand over to Snoopy if it makes it through again? Because I think despite some of those early struggles, he did look better throughout the game. I just don't know if he necessarily saw a lot of specifically support value out of Cthulhu as opposed to solo. But it's kind of hard to tell off just one game.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. One of the things we were talking about is just how difficult it is to utilize his passive, just in general, let alone if you're playing it as support instead of solo. I think in solo, you're at least boxing enough that within those 5-second windows, you could theoretically get 4 stacks to cause them to go into their insanity and maybe get that bonus power. And then, of course, there's the achievement for getting 5 people with it. And if you can do that at all, that's sick. First off, it's 125 bonus power if you're in a team fight, so you'll love to hear that. But it is one of those questions that if you're E United and that's where you're going to be sending Cthulhu, I don't know if Radiance need to be as worried about it. It still was definitely a threat for them, and you could see the control he had, especially early on. But I feel like if it pivots, especially if Radiance want to, now that Yamoja's banned out, to grab it up early and send it over there into the solo lane, it could still prove very potent.
A lot still available, though. Cthulhu, Rat, Olren, obviously. Chronos and Soul still all available, too, as Radiance gives some respect to the Nemesis. They ban that one away. United ban away the Camazotz and the Yamoja. So a lot more is going to make it through. And Radiance, in that first overall pick, elect to take the Olren. And I was curious about this. Did Cyclone Spin take Chronos just because it was left for him, or did they really value it the most? Well, now you can see you take Olren at the top of the draft for Radiance.
And honestly, I think it comes down to the fact that he can crit, right? If you're a magical ADC and you can crit, you're literally getting the best of both worlds. There's nothing wrong with picking him up. The only downside is maybe that he's easier to collapse on, but then, Sanctified Fields really makes it easy for him to turn a fight around. So you have to be very careful, especially if you're this Thor, going in onto Oleron. Maybe try to look down on him early and shut him down so you can just push that off as far as possible. He doesn't get his farm for a little while, and you can at least hope that he's not getting that Ring of Hecate. But this, I think, is what Radiance wanted to do last game, weren't able to do. They pulled in the on her. But Neith, you get the global presence. She's got these abilities that are absolutely going to wreck your health bar. And now they've sped up her backflip just enough that it's a really reliable escape. I mean, you still end up in a very predictable spot, but you aren't going to get caught out nearly as much as you were before. I think this is a really solid combo for your mid-duo start.
Yeah, I think you're right to point out Neith's increased viability. I would not argue with you on that one. Certainly stronger now, to the point where Radiant's picking her up early. Makes some sense to me if this ends up for big man Tings. We've seen him play the Hunter's mid quite a bit throughout his career, so I'm right on board with you in that regard. It'll also be the Kuzenbo. This one may be a bit surprising to me. I think there are a lot of really strong support picks right now, even with Xingqian and Yamoja banned out. We really haven't seen any of the Kepris or the Ganesh, who I think are still plenty strong. But Kuzenbo is great for reflecting, obviously, back that damage. damage, which could be strong into a lot of the assassins and hunters that are strong right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they go through. It's something that we saw specifically, and my mind goes to Trix Tank down there in the Challenger circuit. They love to play it a lot. I believe Space Station was picking it up a little bit there, but it maybe didn't take as well in the Pro League as we had gotten to see. And of course, during our little playoffs, they looked solid, and Kuzenbo has a place. It is really just how well you play him and what you play him into. Yanis, Thor, honestly, even to an extent, Cthulhu are going to be hitting themselves a little harder than they're dealing it out. But with Khepri and Hercules banned out, it feels like E United think this might be a solo lane.
That's what it looks like to me, too, here at Gore. E United have the read that this Kuzenbo is going to be for Benji, the pilot over in the solo lane, and they've pretty much all-in gambled on it with the Khepri Hercules bans here as well. So we'll see if Radiance are maybe willing to swap that out in response to this and put it over solo, if that was the plan all along. We'll sort of get more of a clear read on that as this goes on. Meanwhile, Radiance banning away the Uller and the Cerberus, but I do think E United were probably going to lean towards this magical ADC either way. With them still available, no reason why E United shouldn't grab it.
Now, the thing I love about Soul, even though, like Freya brings something, Kronos brings something, even Olorun, Sanctified Fields is going to be stellar along with that crit. I think he does very much belong at the top of that list. Soul is one of those that I think is going to be easy to overlook because, admittedly, on paper, I think she doesn't necessarily do as much. Freya in a 1v1 is almost always going to be able to win that once she gets the items online. We just saw a pretty solid testament to Kronos in the last game. Soul, though, is really big on objectives for me, and being able to maybe, if you want to, either split push or push down towers. And so while it might not be the biggest team fight for E United having her around, I do think she's going to have a lot of merits coming into this game, and maybe keeping that map equality going more in their favor.
Interesting, the Sun Wukong picked up here as well, so it might be Sun Wukong solo. I think we saw the Soul Leader picked up first overall for Benji on the Camazotz. I'm interested to see if he does the same thing on Wukong.
And I'm wondering what he's going to try here, because with Wukong, specifically the two splits, right? If this is a Kuzenbo solo and say, a Wukong support, I like the idea of being able to level up your 72 transformations, because that Tiger Stun, yes, 1.4 seconds from level 1 to level 5, that's pretty solid, but it also does a lot of damage. You don't have to focus on your clear if you're over there with an Olorun. He's got that covered, and that's where most of his damage can come down on an initial target. If you're Soul, if you're Cthulhu, I guess, going over there, you can get caught out pretty often. That being said, if you're over there in the solo lane, you're still looking at like your Master's Will, looking for the spin. He's got a lot of merit, though, coming into that late game, and being able to have that 1.4 second stun with a Raven means you could set up some kills over there early on for a gank.
Well, it's time for game number 2 after a very close game number 1 between Radiant and E United.
Yeah, E United, I think, will be a little bit surprised with just how game 1 turned out for them. Up until a Fire Giant solo steal away by Cyclone Spin aggro, E United maybe even argue in control of game number 1. It is a run back on the magical ADC for Cyclone. Guy J will pick up the Soul here. An interesting rotation, just sort of hesitating to see if anything will come of it. Luckily, Variety, who's on this Thor in the solo lane again, another look at that, will be able to sidestep it. First, though, out of all the points that I sort of bring up there, Aggro, you did a good job, I think, of sort of explaining the power curve of these different magical ADCs and at what point in the game some of them might be at their highest peak. Matchup between an Olorun and a Soul, what do you make of those two?
I think that neither of these characters should die in the 1v1. Soul has such great safety with Disapparate, but also has very short-lived CC immunity. There is some CC immunity when you cast Supernova, but not a whole ton. So if you get caught in that Sanctified Field, it can be problematic for you, but it's really how effective Guy J's poke can be up against this Olorun. I mean, the Consecration is a lot of healing sustain for Cyclone, especially once he gets that Ring of Hecate online. I don't think it's going to be able to stick to him a whole lot, but maybe Guy J feels like he can be a little bit better in those moments and try and get some kills happening.
Watch out, Snoopy. Aurora's pushed him back into range of the tower here, but it's an early level lead for Snoopy out of the long lane. Just, not dying with 15 seconds left on the countdown. A better start for the Cthulhu here, and Snoopy, I think, did a wonderful job of turning around an early blunder in game number 1, and already asserting a little bit more power over the long lane here, where all else might be considered equal. with the magical ADCs both maybe holding a similar early game presence, Snoopy, I think, is going to be pivotal in pulling a small advantage there. Another thing I mentioned going into game aggro was variety on this Thor in the solo lane. We saw it once in our previous set. Now we're seeing it here again. We might have to return to that as the traditional jungler, and Scream has rotated over to the long lane. One final auto is all he needs. Scream will find it, but the tower will gift the kill over to Aurora. 1-for-1 trade, but on one side you got a support getting it, on the other it's Scream off to a great start.
And E United gets first blood, and Scream just looks so much better already today. It's small sample size, but I think a lot of E United's struggles really came from inconsistency across all their roles. Scream might have been the most inconsistent out of all of them. And in having him be the aggressor in game number 1, I thought he was fantastic on the Nemesis. Radiant seemed to agree because they banned it away from him. And now you've got him on this Pele, again, aggressive early on and gets himself first blood. I think that's a fantastic sign for E United fans. Scream is really going to be a huge factor for this team, no matter what this duo lane does, because Scream has the potential to just win them games anyways. I mean, he's done that in his career a lot. He's been the best jungler in North America for a large portion of his career, and Phase 1 just did not match that level of success that I think a lot of people were expecting for him.
Yeah, again, I don't know if there's such thing as a moral victory, but if there is, United will have one after game number 1. Scream and Adapting both make their way over to the short lane here. Benji and Scream both looking a little bit worse for wear, but Hurrywind has made his way over to solo as well, fully reinforce E United, but no kill to be found just yet. It looks like a successful purple buff invade in the meantime by Radiant over onto the E United purple buff. So while their backs have been against their tier 1 tower for a little bit of the early part of this game, Aurora and Cyclone Spin have found themselves a successful invade.
Interesting. Hurrywind actually uses that ultimate to force Big Man off of his red buff. Don't think that there was necessarily a whole lot of ward coverage, just knows that that's where Big Man is most likely to be in that moment. So a good heads-up play there from Hurrywind to use that ultimate aggressively and save that red. But you're right, I mean, Aurora gets that kill early on and then uses it to be aggressive, and that's kind of what Aurora wants to do on Kuzenbo especially, is be in the enemy's face and really make it difficult for Guy J in particular this game, because Hurrywind's so slippery that that's not really someone that he can lock down super effectively. Guy J, on the other hand, I think that's where Aurora is going to be spending a large portion of his game, is right in the new ADC's face.
Well, you talk about it being difficult to lock down a couple members of E United, and I certainly agree. I'm interested to see how BMT uses his ultimate here this game. I mean, I certainly can't be the only one who's just been chilling in lane, and then suddenly, a Neath ultimate flies across the map, World Weavers me, and I'm stunned, and then I get ganked, and then I'm dead, and beads are down, whatever it may be. I certainly think there's setup potential for BMT on this Neath here out of the mid lane.
Definitely. And it's interesting that Radiance has gone for a pretty different draft than what they did a lot of playoffs. Again, I really focused on their ability to team fight and how that's where they were drafting a lot of their pressure. This game, I mean, you've got Ravin, you've got Wukong, you've got Neath. That's a pretty aggressive 3-part of your composition. It's really only Olorun that team fights super well. I mean, Benji's a pretty good team fighter, but really in the sense that he's just really good at staying alive in the midst of those, not necessarily being the most impactful player on the map. That's kind of where he brings his strength, is just to harassing backliners. Yep. So I think that Radiance might look to be a little bit more aggressive early than they have been previously.
Well, it's United aggressive now. Snoopy's finished off the kill. Variety low underneath the tier 1 tower. Both ultimates from the solo laners exchanged. Variety just trying to wait out and see where Benji is, and he's landed right on top of the Wukong, who has too much damage, and he turns it around. Suddenly, Radiance have pulled back 2 kills, 5:45 into the game.
Yeah, I don't know about that decision-making there from Variety. That was ambitious, is the phrase I like to use. I don't know that he has the damage to full-on kill Benji right there, even if he lands on him. I think it would have been kind of close. Benji, on the other hand, knows that he has a big advantage on that and just has the longer duration. He's healing the whole time as well. Comes down off the Somersault Cloud with perfect timing and kills Variety with relative ease. I think Variety should have probably just given it up and gone back to base a little bit sooner, but as it stands now, that's a pretty handy lead for Benji over here in the solo lane in a matchup that was already seeming to give Variety a little bit of trouble.
Benji certainly can make a difference in some of these fights, so a good start there out of the solo lane. Adapting, I think, has been very good and proactive, sensing that there's been a lot of solo lane pressure against Variety, a couple blue buff invades that have gone Radiance's way. So, you know, despite the game being as even as it is, a couple hundred gold here, is Radiance maybe feeling a little bit stronger. But I continue to love what I'm seeing out of Snoopy here on this Cthulhu. Set up a kill there in the mid lanes, confirmed a kill for himself as well, and won't be shying away. Well, will, now that Aurora's done a good bit of damage, but looking for purple buff invades of his own. I think, you know, he's moved over to a different role and a new strong god quite well.
Definitely. I think that that's exactly what you want to see out of Cthulhu, is what we saw from Snoopy there in the mid lane. Just dive the tower. You don't have to worry about getting CC'd. You're CC immune the whole time. You don't have to worry about the tower damage as much. You've got so much mitigation that that's not really a threat to you either. He's playing aggressively, which is what you want out of this pick.
Snoopy is going to try to lock down Aurora here, and goes Colossal. Hurrywind will finish off the damage, both the snipe and the last tick there. BMT, long range snipe down onto Variety. There you go. Up jumps the Thor, but unfortunately Adapting and Benji both there to finish off the kill. Proactivity on both sides. I don't know if you could say one team more so than the other, but the big difference maker here, the World Weaver from BMT out of the mid lane.
And that's the impact of all these changes to the solo lane as well. Losing Glad Shield is going to bring different gods into the meta, and now you see a lot more either Soul Eater second item, which is what we see from both Variety and Benji, which makes you much more susceptible to ganks by a large margin. And really, that's exactly what we're seeing from Radiance, is playing aggressively on that right side because they know all this poke the Variety is taking is going to stay on him. And he's taking poke more effectively because he doesn't have any physical protection where he would have normally. Not that Thor solo was going Glad, but he would likely build something like Breastplate first item after boots, and that would help him a little bit more. Now that he's behind by this much, and you've got the global ultimate from Big Man, and Benji's going to be doing 1,000,000 damage, because even though you're not as tanky as you used to be, this Soul Eater rush makes you do a lot of damage in that solo lane. I think it's pretty hard for Variety to stay afloat now at this point. I think that Big Man is just going to be ulting him off cooldown.
Yeah, not what you want to see out of this Thor in the solo lane. Scream has opted for the Soul Eater as well here, Aggro, which is a little bit different from what we've seen junglers opt for off the rip. Do you sense some good synergy there for Scream out of the jungle with as good of a start as he's had?
I mean, I like the idea of the Soul Eater on Pele for sure. I mean, you're doubling down with that healing that you get from your passive when you dip low. This was kind of the meta build on her when she first came out, but that passive has seen a lot of nerfs since then and becomes a lot more ineffective.
Well, Benji is going to need a little bit of that extra healing maybe to stay alive here. Snoopy has separated the fight. Variety will drop down. No stun, though, from him, and it's United that are looking to push on the gas just a little bit extra. Aurora has to run away here, and it looks like both teams are able to escape alive pending a re-engage. World Weaver from BMT used just a moment ago and didn't connect for really all that much setup here for the rest of his team. It is an invade, though, for Adapting that has pulled 2 levels ahead of Scream there on the opposite side. A couple of kills for Adapting will certainly help in that regard. Scream has stuck around. Gaijay, though, receives the Sanctified Field. Adapting rotating through from the mid lane, but solo lane action continues as well. Benji has fallen to Variety, and Gaijay has fallen to Adapting on the other side of the map. Both of these teams both making plays on completely different sides of the engagements.
And both teams going to probably get a little bit extra on their way out if they can. Looks like red buff was already invaded by Radiance. Blue buff gets invaded by United. And Hurwin takes a large chunk of damage for his troubles on the way out. But you feel like Adapting getting another kill is more worth it than Scream getting a small assist on the right-hand side of the map. That first death for Scream, where he gets first blood and then dies a tower, no problem at all. I think that's a perfectly acceptable death. Then it was the time after he went in and tried to seal away the back camps. His second death was really problematic because it made it very easy for Adapting to extend this lead. And like I said, I thought that the main advantage of how well United played in Game 1 was how much better Scream was playing. Scream behind in a matchup that can be pretty difficult because Pele's knockup is so telegraphed. It's really easy for overhead kick to get over that. Robin, if he can blink onto you, it's really easy to force your volcanic lightning in this matchup. Feel like Scream's going to have to try and find a window where he can be aggressive once again if United want to come back into this one.
We'll have to keep our finger on sort of the jungle pulse here. It's a 2-level lead where we stand. 11:45 into the game. 3 kills as well. The short lane, rather, dominance from Benji continues. He might just tank up all of this tower damage. There's the ult on cooldown, but World Weaver won't end up connecting. Up to the sky it goes. Variety will drop down, get stunned, and nearly finished off by BMT. That is 23 HP. But what a play from BMT to nearly sneak away that kill.
Very close. A little surprised Scream didn't just step in and take that World Weaver for him, but maybe worried of a rotation from Adapting, who can do this to you very easily. Scream going to try and get a run, but Variety teleporting in might have done enough to peel away the dive from Radiance.
Well, Benji felt just fine to walk it Variety under the Tier 1 tower. I can't imagine Scream at lower HP fares much better, and he sure doesn't. Now died a few times in a row despite a fantastic start from this Pele. Adapting is going to pull more than 2 levels ahead here. Could get worse now that Variety is being looked at by Adapting and Benji as well. No teleport for this solo lane Thor. The right-hand side of the map aggro might just need to be forfeit.
Yeah, I mean, Variety has just made a bunch of really weird mistakes this game. I mean, the dunk down where that obviously isn't going to work. Right there, you know Benji and Adapting are on the right side of the map. You can't hammer to clear the wave. You're just going to die for it every time. And you see the buff to Wukong there, the longer stun duration on the 72 transformations comes into play a little bit. This can happen to United. It happened a lot to them in Phase 1 where the right side of the map kind of just falls apart. It's Scream and Variety that sometimes just have these games. And I think that, I mean, Hurry's in a pretty good spot this game. GuyJ's been bullied a little bit more on this Soul than he was on the Hachiman. He's down 2 levels now. This looks more like the Phase 1 of United to me, where it's just a couple good things, but a lot of weird mistakes, a couple deaths that shouldn't happen, and they just put themselves in a position where they have to play literal perfectly to win games when they just shouldn't have to at that point.
It's got to be tough for GuyJ. I mean, especially where you consider a lot of the engagements have been happening and not so many over on that solo lane side of the map. It was Adapting, rotating over for that kill that finally put GuyJ down. But it's about a 1.5 level lead here for Cyclone Spin, and that means the left side of the map is going to be maybe open for Radiance as well. And that means Gold Fury is going to get taken to half HP. Cyclone can do most of that damage on his own. We saw Typhon's Fang, Hecate, and one more item, solo FG in our previous game. Snoopy, though, is going to try to make Cyclone Spin go somewhere else, but instead he walks into his death. BMT finishes off that kill, and Cyclone Spin will get one of his own. Watch out, Variety has gone up here, trying to select a better target to land down on, and it's a Roar. This time, GuyJ has finished off the kill. Gold Fury still stands. It's a 3 versus 3 around the Fury pit.
I mean, now you look at how these health bars are looking for Radiance. They've got a little bit more healing because of Cyclone Spin, and Gold Fury continues to get low, but Adapting wants the kills.
GuyJ has to Aegis out a lot of that damage. Variety there as well, but unfortunately the Soul will go down. Rampaging is Adapting out of the jungle. Fury taken down by Radiance. A Sanctified Field will slow down Variety, but not enough. Good dodge by Adapting. Hurry went nearly with the fadeaway kill. So a moment to breathe as both teams trade out a somewhat equal amount of kills, but the Fury, the big difference maker.
You look at how much damage these auto attackers are doing. I mean, Neath and Olaron just shredded through Snoopy last time. Bit unfortunate there that Snoopy pushes Big Man out of the way of Heroine's damage, but I don't think they would have been able to kill him even with it. And this is where United starts to feel like they're stretching for things, right? They're going for things that are low percentage because they're behind the 8 ball once again. I mean, a 7,000 experience difference at 15 minutes is massive. I mean, it's 2 levels in jungle, 2 levels in solo, 2 levels in ADC. That's just so much you have to fight through that now you have to try and hold on, keeping around this deficit until you get to the late game where the levels won't matter as much.
And Radiants are not going to allow E United to do that. Snoopy has to leave, so does Hurrywin. Scream has rejoined the fray. Great damage from the E United jungler. And he's actually healed up a decent amount here. Stays in the fight, stays alive. It looked like Radiants were on the winning end of that fight, and still might be if they're able to fully re-engage. But Snoopy, way too large. The tier 1 tower ends up falling down into 5 versus 4. E United on the back foot. Benji, nobody's re-engaging with you, and he's able to make it into the ultimate. Nonetheless, the tier 1 tower goes down. BMT falls. Wait, Benji lands back down, maybe sensing that the rest of his team was there. Not to be uncharacteristic suddenly from Radiance, as they've traded out 3 for the tier 1 in the mid lane.
Yeah, now it's Radiance's turn to make it look like it's week 1 again. I mean, it is. It's week 1 for phase number 2.
4.
But a bit awkward there for Radiance for sure. Just mistake after mistake, and now they're going to lose a Pyromancer for it. Little surprised that United doesn't just go for Fire Giant.
I agree.
Maybe that would have been forcing it a little bit too much, but you know Big Man isn't up for a while. You know Sanctified Field is down. Scream was pretty low on mana, and you didn't have an ultimate in the bank, so I understand the hesitance. But that is a what-if moment for United for sure.
Sure, and somewhat equal on the actives coming out of that one as well. Snoopy having both of his certainly could make a difference if a fight were to break out here at some point in the next few minutes. Cyclone Spin has now expanded on that lead, though, out of the long lane. It was 2 levels a few moments ago, 1 to 2, depending on where the wave was crashing at the time. But with relatively the same amount of impact in these team fights, and I purely mean on a numbers level, 1, 1, and 3 versus 1, 2, and 4, Gaijay has a lot of ground to make up. Maybe Snoopy rotating over will help him in that regard. A Sanctified Field. Cyclone Spin instead wants to turn around the damage onto the Soul. And Snoopy left running. Look at the presence that a 3-level lead on Cyclone Spin will bring him.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage, and he gets the beads out from Gaijay there as well. I do wonder if Gaijay could have probably just supernovaed his way out without having to use the ultimate, but beads for Sanctified Field is more even than most ultimates for beads because the cooldown on Sanctified Field is so long, and Olaruns usually don't build any CDR anyways. So not the end of the world on that trade, but for Cyclone to go basically even when he's the one getting ganked is it says a lot.
Sure does. Cyclone Spin will be happy about it. Basically, 1 full completed item over Gaijay, and we'll have to see if... okay, so Gaijay does have the Tier 2 ring at least. So not all that far behind, despite a 2-level lead out of that solo lane. And I think it's so good to bring up the Sanctified Field. You look at what Gaijay is going to be able to do, and it's just more damage on top of some of these team fights. But if Cyclone Spin is operating well with these Sanctified Fields and some of these jungle engagements, I think you can make an argument that that's just purely more impact on some of these team fights.
Without a doubt. I mean, that Sanctified Field is just the most impactful team fight ultimate in the whole game. So it's not like it's taken away from Soul to say that she's not going to be able to match that, because of course she can't. But it is more AoE for E United and more team fight presence than the Hachiman. I think that they've done a good job of changing their draft enough to where now I do think that they can end up being more impactful in these late game team fights. I don't think they're as far behind in that category as they were in game number 1. Now it's the level disparities that you're worried about. They're starting to shrink because you catch up in XP pretty quickly once you get into the higher levels, but it is a concern, I think, right now for E United that they're going to have a tough time in these team fights just based on itemization and levels.
Variety was looking for poke, and instead he's maybe found death instead. World Weaver will connect, and it'll slow down Variety reaching the skies. The Anvil of Dawn. United looking towards the Oni Fury here, but Cyclone Spin will say, thank you very much for leeching it for me. Now Radiants have pulled themselves a kill, a Fury, and now a little bit of a wider gold lead, 20 minutes, 30 seconds into this game.
Just another bad mistake by Variety, who really has had a bunch of those so far in this game. It makes an even easier fight around that Oni Fury there for Radiance. Is wow, Scream feels like he has to use that ultimate just in case. Didn't, I guess, have the cooldown knowledge on Adapting's ultimate, because that must have been what he was afraid of.
Wow, and now it's Fire Giant started up. Sanctified Field over the FG. It's not the solo FG, but just a little help from BMT, and Cyclone Spin will do a lot of the damage despite BMT finishing off that final shot. Can't shrug off the Neath damage there either. But we've now seen a magical ADC solo the FG. You pair that with these mid lane hunters we're also starting to see. None of these objectives appear to be safe aggro, regardless of how early on into the game we are.
Seems that way. I mean, lots of lifesteal between the first 3 items there for Cyclone, and then a ton of damage coming from the Telkines as well. Radiance really, they've made their fair share of mistakes, but I just think they've capitalized on United's mistakes better than United has capitalized on Radiance's mistakes. I mean, you look at what United got when Radiance overstepped their boundaries in the mid lane. It was a Pyromancer. That's not good enough. I mean, that's just not going to bring you back into these games. Whereas every time United is overstepped, it feels like Radiance has really been able to find something off of it. Oni Fury, then Fire Giant. Earlier, it was just spreading the map and farming really well and starting to blow the game wide open in that direction. United now has to really hope this Cthulhu can carry their siege defense once again.
Yeah, it sure has been a lot of Snoopy trying to open up the doors to these team fights successfully, I might add. He's affected 7 of the 9 kills, second only to Scream out of the jungle. Doing more of the same here. Anvil of Dawn from Variety won't connect, but BMT under the eye of United, and that's a completed dive underneath the tier 1 tower and a completed teleport. Benji has suddenly rejoined the fray here. Variety tanking up this tier 1 tower. Aurora adapting off to the right-hand side. 5 members of the United full back pedal mode here. Cyclone Spin tries to make his way back into the fight as well. That's Aurora who's pushed back Snoopy all of a sudden, and Cyclone Spin will thank him for it. 4 members of Radiance, 4 members of the United. The chase goes on. That looks like maybe where we stop if Benji can't find the big stun over onto Variety, who gets out thanks to Hurry.
But Adapting's going to find his way into the backline. Guy J up front and doesn't get a whole lot of value out of that Supernova. That's going to be an easy disengage. And now a tier 2 tower. Even though Big Man got picked, United has stuck around a little bit too long. They kept thinking maybe we kill Benji here, maybe we get out. They weren't able to make a cohesive call, and they're getting punished.
Variety has another Anvil of Dawn, and this one also does not connect for the stun. The wall will maybe move Radiance off to the side just a little bit, but it's not going to slow down this Phoenix siege. Aurora's taken a good bit of damage. Variety, though, doing so as well. Half HP on the Phoenix. Scream moving his way in. Aurora quite low. That maybe spells the end of this fight here. Snoopy back off of respawn. Both teams fully reinforced, and it's just some health off the Phoenix and the tier 2 tower that crumbles.
You see the difference between the Chronos and the Olarun when it comes to the Phoenix damage. I mean, just no additional damage coming from the Olarun besides that attack speed steroid, but because his damage as a mage ADC comes from being able to crit, that doesn't help on these structures, so it makes it a big difference in comparison to someone like Soul or Chronos, who actually gets bonus basic attack damage, not coming from a bonus like crit. That means that Radiance can't get that left side Phoenix, but they're still in a commanding position in this game. And it makes me think, I mean, that these last few engagements, Genetics, I don't think was able to make a big impact when it came to the mechanical aspect of the game. I think that he was certainly lacking there. I understand the situation playing from Europe, but we have to call it as we see it, right? I mean, he's not playing from anywhere else. So I understand the need to make a switch for United. But the one thing that Genetics did bring was that voice, that leadership aspect. And Snoopy, despite being a veteran and being in the league for a long time, is he ready to be that leading voice in communications? Is that going to be his role? Because Guy J's probably not going to do it, right? I mean, he's coming as an ADC, which I think is one of the hardest roles to call from. He doesn't have any SPL experience. You're not asking him to take over that shot calling. So who is doing the shot calling now for United is a big question mark for me, and I think that lack of direction was noticeable there.
It sounded like Variety went to the sky, and he sure did. Down he slams, and Big Man Tings will learn the hard way that United still have plenty of damage on their side. It's Aurora at half HP. Snoopy is going to play Gate Guardian back to safety. A big Sanctified Field from Cyclone Spin, though, might reopen this fight for Radiance, and it sure does as Scream goes down. But Guy J, he's reached level 20. He's got plenty of damage himself as well. Snoopy is going to try to leave the fray as Adapting lurks around the left-hand side. Benji, he's gone right back in, but it looks like maybe a 1-for-1 ending a chase. It's kind of the opposite of what we've seen aggro, where United reactively get themselves a kill and are able to stay safe.
Benji stunned by Variety, but not a whole lot of follow-up damage there in order to try and kill him, as Cyclone tries to get that Primal Fury in his favor, but realizes that maybe trying to hit Whirlwind might be a little bit better suited right now with how much damage he's taken.
I love the way Cyclone Spin is operating with this Spear of the Magus as well, proccing it with the big one and then turning around the auto attack damage there. Variety is going to find the stun, though, over onto Cyclone Spin. There's not enough healing in that kit to keep him alive. Adapting has found a kill in the back line. The back and forth trades continue 26 minutes into the game. Variety has made reparations for his previous woes with a double kill over from the solo lane. Benji taken low. Who's going to finish off the Wukong? If nothing else, Benji can get away from a fight, and he will this time. But a big turnaround from Variety 27 minutes in.
Yeah, good dunk there from him. Critical to try and take down this Olarun, who really needs multiple people on him at all times. And that time United is able to take an extended engagement and win it, despite being down 9K in the gold department. Not for nothing. I mean, that is pretty impactful for them to win that team fight. Keep Radiance off that Primal Fury. Extend this game. Allow United to close that itemization gap. They've closed the experience gap now, so they're not worried about that anymore, but they need to get to their 6 items, whereas Radiance really has theirs basically across the board.
Everyone level 20. It's actually Snoopy who holds a 1-level lead over Aurora. So despite how the game has gone for Radiance, it's actually Aurora who's going to be the last to reach level 20 here. Not surprising given how Snoopy has played a lot of these fights, and that is also not surprising given what we know about Cthulhu. United takes down the Fury. It was Radiance close by. This game seems right back to even here 28 minutes in, despite what is an 8,000 gold lead. Just a couple members of the United looking to finish off those last few items. I think United have to be wary, though, and we already saw it. The Fire Giant can be taken down by BMT and Cyclone Spin, so getting that ward coverage on the backside of the map here is maybe doubly important given the composition that Radiance have built.
And the same goes for the Primal Fury they just got. That would have also been very good at making sure that Radiance can burn it down without taking too much damage and doing the extra damage on that end. Got to give credit where it's due, by the way, to adapting. I think he was pretty quiet in game 1. Frankly, didn't need to be anything but quiet because the way that Radiance played the map made it pretty easy for him to just be the ult bot. But in this game on this Robin, he has been really impressive. 8-2-2 for him. He has ruined Guy J's opportunities in these fights.
A lot of it's been on this right-hand side of the map. Absolutely agreed. I think Adapting has had a phenomenal game 2 here. Variety can't say the same about that anvil of Dawn, as you won't find the stun. Maybe a bit of disengage there. This is what Radiance might be looking to do, though. Just buy space for BMT and Adapting and Cyclone Spin to finish off the FG. In go United. Radiance, though, are going to be the ones to take it down. Scream has found the backline, but Adapting, he's the one who ends up finding the kill. It's Snoopy down to half HP, and Variety will finish off Cyclone Spin finally. BMT has gotten one himself as well. A double kill for the mid lane Neath, and the Fire Giant to boot. A big play there for Radiance.
And that's all set up because Big Man has a perfect World Weaver onto Heroin. Hurry's gonna blink Giannis, which is something that we've seen a lot in ranked, but it's starting to move its way into the SPL. I kind of like it. But when you don't have Aegis, you have to be so scared of any damage coming your way. So Hurry has to beads and defensively ult out of that engagement, which makes Radiance not have to fear Reunited really at all on their backline dive. They know they've got plenty of space and they've got plenty of time before United can close that gap. So they pull FG, and as soon as Scream goes in, as soon as Variety goes in, as soon as Snoopy goes in, Radiance know that they don't have to respect anything else. They don't have to respect what United's going to bring elsewhere because Heroin's ultimate is down. And so Hurry and Guy J are off in a different area code for that whole team fight. They weren't able to impact it at all because of Big Man forcing Heroin out with that ultimate.
And you look at so much of where the setup has been, you know, for Radiance here, kind of counteracting. Obviously, Snoopy's been kind of that first man in. Variety has absolutely followed up there as well. Sanctified Field has been pivotal, and we've made no qualms about how important that ultimate is. I think BMT with these World Weavers, especially the way his build has gone, finishing things off with the Heartseeker here, kind of and then, has some of those bows in the build as well, so still doing plenty of the auto attack damage and doing it frequently. But whoever gets hit with that World Weaver is melted down so heavily that they might not be able to participate in the fight, which is sort of the point you're making there, of course, about Hurrywind having to be extra careful in re-engaging here. So I think a lot of the setup has been not flawless, but well executed by Radiance.
In the fights that United has done well, they've done well by killing Big Man right off the bat before he ever uses that World Weaver aggressively. And they're probably going to look to do the same sort of thing here, try and catch somebody with that through space and time.
Well, it's Benji here who gets walled and portaled, and that'll drop him down to half HP. His right side fire minions that United have to be worried about, but blocked off by at least one minion wave there. So have a moment to not have to worry about moving over to the short lane side of the map, though pings are ringing out. So if Radiance can kind of delay for a few moments, they'll give themselves a bit of an opening. It's Benji pulling the eye of 2 or 3 over from E United. Could be a good engage here, though, if E United are able to find, maybe a sneaky way for Snoopy to get in there, though you do have to be worried about relics. Aegis coming back for Cyclone Spin, both on BMT. It's going to be difficult to find those priority targets.
This does get a little bit easier, though, for United, because they know that Hurrywind can't just get World Weavered off a ward.
Well, maybe Radiance are going to bring the fight right to them. Look at Adapting. He has no health. Cyclone Spin doesn't either. Variety has found the kill to open up this fight for United. Snoopy's so low, but the damage just isn't there from Radiance to take him down. Aurora is going to get locked down. BMT, though, has found a kill elsewhere. 4-man stun from Aurora, thanks to the mantle, but Hurrywind is going to get him down nonetheless. It's the defense that United needed, aggro. Snoopy goes down, but that's, I don't want to say just your support, but you've gotten rid of Cyclone Spin and Aurora on the opposite side.
Didn't see what happened there, but I can only imagine, based on the low health bars, that Hurrywind hit a multi-man snipe and makes the team fight look really easy because of it. It's just the nature of the character, and it puts a lot of pressure on him, but there's a reason Hurry is the Giannis player in all of SPL history, man. He just consistently seems to do it. And right there, it's Cyclone, Adapting, Big Man, they're all a little bit grouped up. That's exactly where Cthulhu wants you.
And United have bought themselves some time. Was Hurrywind on top of your Giannis tier list? I saw you guys did that.
Of course, yeah. I'm not as ridiculous as Barracuda putting someone else there. An absolute fool. It's obviously Hurrywind, and there's no other option.
Yeah, I'll give Aggro the platform, and I guess you guys have already had your debate on the matter on the podcast, so maybe no more needs to be said than what Hurrywind has done here. 3-0-11, kept his team in the game. At this point, though, I don't want to say 9K gold lead be damned, but you're looking across the board, boots starting to get sold off. I mean, it's really those pots that are the big difference maker. So E-United, I think we have to continue to heap praise on them for the way they've kept themselves in these last 2 games. But you worry because this is starting to get into Radiance territory. These late 35 to 45-minute games is where Radiance seem to flourish.
Agreed. That's where they made their hay at the playoffs, and I think that is their team identity for now, is how capable they are in these late game team fights of just staying at home and really being very effective in these moments. So if E-United can continue to rely on Hurrywind to find these big snipes, maybe they won't have to worry about it as much. But the big thing is making sure that E-United has dominant ward coverage, because last time they lost a Fire Giant fight is because of this World Weaver off
no.
ward.
And it's over on the Scream. Can Adapting get rid of him? He sure can. BMT sets up another one. A good sidestep from Adapting, though, to miss out on the big Hurrywind snipe. And it wasn't there as Variety drops down, gets rid of Adapting nonetheless. It's a 4 versus 4, over here in the solo lane. Snoopy being just poked down by BMT. Wall will separate the re-engagement from Radiance, and a portal will keep Snoopy alive, and that's the call for Radiance to turn right back towards FG.
Jungler for jungler, one of them now 3-7, the one 10-3. Think United's probably pretty happy about that. Adapting has been so strong so far in this game. Big thing to note, both Magical ADCs still have those game-changing ults.
And both have both of their actives as well. Snoopy has to dash away here. Still pulling the FG, though, just delayed. World Weaver through, knocks down Snoopy. BMT yet again hits those shots, or rather nobody from E-United is going to block out for the low health Cthulhu. Aurora dodges out a lot of that Guy J ultimate damage. And this is what we expect. This is Enhanced Fire Giant against Cyclone Spin and BMT. Sanctified Field as Variety drops down, and it's E-United who take it away. What got it? We'll see in just a moment. Cyclone Spin has finished off Variety, but it's Variety who steals away the FG and keeps this game alive for E-United.
GuyJ in trouble. Benji finds him from the side with that great stun, but no ultimate for Benji means now he is caught between these two magical damage dealers. E-United back in it, and you wonder sometimes, Variety's Duncan Wukong clones and hammering waves when there's two people in his jungle, and you go, what is this guy doing? Well, he makes plays like that to make you go, okay, I see you, Variety. That's why you're still here and making plays all this time. Dunks in, gets the beads from Big Man, and then steals away the Fire Giant with the hammer.
United better off for it, but now you've thrown away one of those buffs. Scream no longer able to make the Fire Giant impact or a game impact for the next minute. So adapting, the rest of Radiance not shying away. And suddenly GuyJ is not able to make it to the portal. Adapting has pulled back a couple of kills, and it's only Hurrywind aggro that still has that FG buff alive, not feeling dissuaded despite the FG being taken away.
This is the most E-United game of SMITE I've ever seen in my whole life. I mean, this is the perfect encapsulation of what they've done in Season 7. I mean, it's head-scratching play after a great play after a head-scratcher, and then they steal Fire Giant, and then Scream goes in and gets insta-killed, and it's not even close on their damage. I mean, and then GuyJ gets picked, and it's not really his fault. It's that they'd committed to that play already by sending Scream in. Adapting's able to get him easily.
Whoa!
And then they do that!
I can't see where Cyclone Spin just went. It's the double ultimates from Variety and Hurrywind that take him down, but again, it's BMT who will trade back a kill. It's Snoopy for Cyclone Spin so far here. Benji has to take to his own ultimate and will make his way safely after a blink and a bird form will keep him alive. So there's the combination. I mean, that's a good magnifying glass on exactly what E-United want to do. Variety dunks down, Hurrywind will snipe out with the ultimate, and Cyclone Spin can't do anything about it.
It's just exactly what I was just saying. They make this weird play, and then they have perfect synergy in one-tap Cyclone through beads. I mean, Cyclone beads instantly, was quick on the relics, and that half a second where he's standing still off the stun, Hurrywind hits him anyways. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about with the inconsistency of this team, but it's just whichever one they roll multiple times in a row. They're rolling ones or 20s. There's nothing in between. It's just how many 20s in a row can we get versus how many ones come up before the next 20. It seems to be the case for E-United. Because when they're on, they look great. The Radiance, you have to give credit as the second best team coming into Phase 2 because of how they played at playoffs. They're giving them the work at times, and other times they're gift wrapping plays for them. So who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be fun every time United plays. I can tell you that much because it's going to be crazy one way or another.
I mean, it's just been the story. Phase 1, Phase 2, maybe no different. It's consistency for United, either on top of the world or getting pushed aside. This time around, though, they've hung with one of the best here in this league. And we've officially, I think, reached the point where it's just going to come down to execution. The speed pot's being picked up. Boots almost fully gone here in this game. It's whether or not you can one-tap Cyclone Spin and get out alive, or you're going to trade out a little bit too much and the fight is going to go in the opposite direction. Still Fire Giant buff, though, on Hurrywind. That's going to last for another 10 seconds here, aggro. Pyromancer and Fire Giant will be back up. Both Pyromancer still available, but Fire Giant back and respawning a minute after that. At this point, you wonder who's feeling maybe the most comfortable on some of these Fire Giant fights. Obviously, Radiance may be a little bit shaken because Variety can just swoop in and steal it away if you're just going to have two members, that's BMT and Cyclone Spin, left trying to DPS it down.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult to zone away these globals from Thor and from Giannis, but Radiance has been able to do it in the past. The big thing is that Hurrywind just bought a 3k power pot, so now we're talking he doesn't need any additional damage to one-shot somebody with his ult 2. That should basically outright kill just about anybody, and that's a big deal because now Hurrywind, who's had a fantastic game, 5-0 for him, you think maybe he can just do it by himself and not need any of that setup.
Oh, it's Gonna come down to the next Fire Giant fight, and it is respawning here in the next few seconds. Quick look at ward coverage. Really better off here by Radiance. Have those sentry ward, the control wards that are gonna buy them a little bit extra vision. United are gonna move their way in. Adapting does some good damage over onto Snoopy as Aurora's made his way into the backline. That's an ultimate down onto Hurrywind. World Weaver blocked out by Gaijay. It was intended for Hurrywind, but Gaijay has to leave this fight. It's Snoopy being looked at, portaled away thanks to Hurrywind. Variety drops down, but the rest of his team has left. It's Cyclone Spin who opens up the killing here, and that's gonna maybe be a free FG for Radiance.
What a knockup by Cyclone Spin. That was the consecration, the 3 from Olorun that catches Variety mid-hammer throw. That's a thin margin for error against that wall. It's a pretty big wall. You have to get it right at the right time, and because Variety didn't pre-beads, found himself unable to teleport because of the great play from Cyclone. But again, it's if Big Man can find Hurrywind with that World Weaver, Hurrywind has to use that ultimate to get out instead of get in, and it changes the whole dynamic of the team fight for E-United.
Yeah, who can snipe better between BMT and Hurrywind, or who can block the snipe from E-United? Seems to be where this hinges. Now they've got a 4v5 defense. Make it a 3v5. This is Radiance's opening to maybe end the game. Hurrywind has found good damage over onto Cyclone Spin and gotten the kill, but Adapting has immediately turned this one around. Gaijay backing his way into the fountain, and it's the Titan being looked at by Radiance. Down goes Gaijay. It's a double kill for Adapting, but the Titan doing some work here as well. Radiance have found their way into the Titan room, but they don't have the damage to finish it off just yet. Adapting now stunned down. Variety up into the air, and Benji is going to try to keep things going. It's a double stun from Variety. Snoopy finds the kill. Titan taken low. The double not enough, and Radiance finish off the game.
What a crazy day to start us off here in Phase 2, huh, Dave? A really fun back and forth set
over here.
Between... and now you can see it, too. You can see the sweat no matter what with these two cameras. Yeah, perfect timing for us, but not so perfect timing there for E-United. Look, I think that they had a lot of great moments today, but they also had a lot of great moments in Phase 1, and I don't think that their problems that they had today had anything to do with the duo lane. Gaijay struggled on the soul pick. That's going to get worked on. Snoopy had some bad moments on the Cthulhu, but also had some great ones. I think that the main thing is the right side of the map for United just cannot afford to have that bad early games and expect to win a whole lot of games, especially against teams like Radiance.
Yes, especially when Radiance wants to take you to those late games. I agree. Kind of the summary is hats off to United. They obviously continue to play well in these games, just short of consistent enough, though, to take this one over Radiance, who find their way into the win column with a 2-0 here in their first game of Phase number 2. This one's exciting, but that's it for you and I here, Agro. We'll go back to Finch on the desk to break it down.
Thanks, Dolson and Agro. What a game that one was, huh, to try and close out this first day, because it looked like Radiance had it locked up around the 23-minute mark. I was ready to pack up the bags and go, but they ran into this wall, man. The Cthulhu, Variety playing well on that Thor solo as well, and they just could not get the job done until right there at the very end. Gore, talk to me a little bit, man, about what it was that you saw that started to really slow down their push there towards the end of that game, because it really felt like, to me, Radiance should have closed it out 15 minutes earlier.
Yeah, honestly, they were, very, very solidly ahead, like you said, 20 minutes in, and then Hurrywind, Variety, and Snoopy, I think, as kind of like a trio, just decided, yeah, we're not going to lose. And I was telling you about it while we were watching, because I was just like, they're not really doing anything that is progressing them anywhere. I mean, the entire time you watch the last 20 minutes of that game, the lead almost always exists for Radiance. It never really gets closer for E-United. They just hold on to where they are, and I think that's what E-United did. They just didn't lose for another 20. Variety had a lot of really good plays. Hurrywind, again, proves that his Giannis is not only the best in the Pro League, probably just best in the world, considering how many people are able to make it look this good at this level. It's one, and it is him. And then Snoopy, at a certain point, just started CCing, causing a lot of attention to himself. And, of course, that Fire Giant steal from Variety really did kind of help seal the deal as well, where it just made it so much more difficult for Radiance to use that lead efficiently, even though they had been able to cultivate it, even though Adapting has a hell of a game here on this Raven. They just held out.
They did, and I'm glad you pointed out this great game from Adapting too, because I think that he got a little bit of flack from me in particular too about his phase one, how sometimes he'd be a bit slow to jump into fights and pick his moments, but that was not the case this game, man. Adapting's stamp was all over this one. Not just him, Cyclone Spin had an excellent performance in this game as well. Benji felt nigh unkillable, and the Sun Wukong showing some of the versatility of the solo lane builds that are out there now as well. What about Big Man Ting showing that Neath is back in the fray and absolutely looking strong as well. This is a great performance top to bottom from Radiant. They hit those snags, I think, because E United is a strong team that just let themselves fall too far behind early to really ever get onto the offensive.
Dude, let's talk about the real MVP. Benji just alive enough to help get the Titan kill after his team dies.
Yeah.
Like that game is just one pinpoint away, maybe one ability away, one cooldown from going another 15 minutes, right? From still being, live right now, because E United were just that close to eliminating him. I think his protection items, maybe the sledge working some of its magic on him to make sure that he's able to stay alive there. I think it was incredible for them, but nothing to scoff at is what E United's defense had. And I think much to what the casters were saying at the very end there, you're not seeing a lot of glaring issues between Guy J and the crew, Snoopy now on support. It really is just trying to get this to mesh together and meld the way they need to. But if you're taking the team that is number 2 out of phase 1 like this, then I expect United to have a very phenomenal phase 2 here.
Yeah, just a couple things need to come together a bit more for them. I mean, just kind of looking at those stats at the end, Scream's numbers obviously a bit underwhelming. And I think that's more an example of the way the game has gone, but also a lot of it has to do with the way this early game went too, right, Gore? I mean, they're in a better position, I think, if they get a little bit more out of Scream throughout this game.
Yeah, and I think that showcases once again the kind of point we've been reiterating, which is the importance of the jungler right now. Your carries, they hit a certain limit, and they're going to have the goal to get their build online. They're going to start hitting hard at some point. Your mids, you can have somebody having a phenomenal performance the way that we saw out of Hurrywind here, and it's still not going to be enough. You need that extra punch coming out of the jungle, and much like we've seen today, that's made the difference. Even in Game 1, the strength that we saw out of that Nemesis United were running is what helped them kind of keep pace with Radiance. Unfortunately, here this time it just didn't keep up as well.
No, it didn't. Things got a little bit too far out of control for them, and they end up losing in 2 games. Can't find a way into that third match to stretch them out a bit longer. But I think we saw that where their issues are, it's correctable, right? It's not as if they have some fundamental flaws as a team or that they're not competitive. It's that just a little bit more needs to get cleaned up. And remember, Phase 2 is a lot longer. Everyone's playing each other 3 times. They'll get a lot more cracks at Radiance to try and improve their standings. They just need to make sure they're ready for it that next time, Gordon Miser. Well, at least that's it for that game, but we still have to talk to the victors and see how Radiant are feeling. Aurora is the one that's standing by here with that interview.
That's right, Finch. Aurora is with me. Support for Radiance. First of all, Aurora, big congrats. 2-0 over E United. This one a little bit tumultuous, maybe the best way to describe it. 35 or so minutes, 45 or so minutes. Kind of zoomed out look at this one. How do you grade the Radiance performance today in the 2-0? You might be muted over there, Aurora. I'm not sure if there's a mic on the bottom of your screen. Might be able to unmute it over on the side of the headset.
Testing. Hello.
Yes, we got it.
Good?
We got you.
All right,
so how do you grade your performance today?
I felt like we played pretty good. I feel like we could have made a lot of improvements in certain areas, but I mean, it's the first week of SPL. We got time to work on that stuff, and a win's a win, so we're happy with it.
Absolutely. You guys start off strong, and the best way to start a 2-0 here on day number 1 of Phase 2. I want to get your thoughts on both roles there in the duo lane. First off, let's talk about magical ADCs. I think we have to. As a support, maybe, what are your kind of takes on where that meta stands? Do you imagine it's magical ADCs or bust coming out of the duo lane here over the next few weeks?
I don't know, to be honest. There's a lot of gods being played right now, just across the scrims we've been playing in duo. We've seen magicals and we've seen some hunters, and I think there's a lot of room to pick a bunch of different gods right now, which is kind of cool. But who knows? Like,
right?
It's just the first week, so I have no idea. But there are some nerfs coming out to Hecate and the bonus balance, so we'll be playing on that next week. So scrimming on that, maybe we'll see less. Maybe we'll see more. Who knows? But yeah,
Right.
I mean, they seem good right now, and Hunters seem good too. So we'll just have to see what
Right, why
happens.
Hunter players are absolutely happy. Kind of final thoughts here, Aurora. You didn't get to play him today, but Cthulhu was double picked there by Snoopy. What are your thoughts on him as a support character?
He seems like he could be really strong. I think a lot of people are still trying to learn how to play him, kind of like how Yamoja was when she first came out. So I think once people get maybe a better mastery of him or understand him more, maybe he'll be better. Maybe he'll become worse too, because I think a lot of people really don't know what he does. Even the pro players kind of don't know everything about him yet because he's so new, and he just started being available in ranked and in scrims and stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I definitely think he could be good. Snoopy played it well, I feel like, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he does damage in a big circle and runs at you, and more will be revealed maybe over the next few weeks. Aurora, thank you very much for taking the time. Congrats to you, 2-0 over E United here in your first game of phase number 2. That's it for us on the interview, so we'll go back to Finch to wrap up the day.
Thank you.
One thing has been consistent from talking to these pros. There is still a lot to unpack with this mid-season update, so you got to stay tuned to the SPL and make sure you can see exactly how the pros are making sense of all of this. Again, congrats to Aurora and the Radiance boys for being able to find that first win. Gore, how are you feeling after our first day? Does everything kind of match up with your expectations here?
I think we got to see Ghost beat Ghost Gaming again, which everybody's always excited for. Unfortunately, that means for Obey, it's a little bit of a rocky start. They hopefully aren't going to start off the same way they started off Phase 1. But I think we got to see a lot out of E United, even though that reads 2-0. They definitely had a lot more wins than that signifies in those individual games. Once we get the rest of these teams seen, throughout the rest of this week, and specifically, my eyes are kind of on Sanguine, the one that was keeping up with, honestly, even SSG. The top 4 teams were so close in Phase 1. I anticipated getting even closer throughout this. I'm excited to see what they have to bring tomorrow.
Exactly right. We're going to be seeing the Knights, your defending world champions, playing tomorrow. Sanguine, who had the best overall record in Phase 1, playing tomorrow. Space Station, who are considered, I think, by a lot of people in their power rankings, the best team. I think there's a lot to be seen tomorrow, so make sure you check back in at the exact same time tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern to check out that next stream. But for all the other casters, for production, who had to work through a lot to make the show happen for us today, we appreciate all of you, and we appreciate you all for watching, so make sure you check back with us next time for some more SPL.